I'm calling to order the Simsbury Zoning Commission meeting of February 5th, 2004. Our first order of business is always to check attendance, and all of our commissioners are present. One alternate, Dave Moore, hasn't arrived yet, but the alternates aren't seated because all the commissioners are here. Okay. Now can you hear me? Okay, let me try this. All of the commissioners are here, except for an alternate, Dave Moore, who's arriving late. When he comes in, he'll just sit down, and he's not acting in this meeting because all the commissioners are here. So the first order of business is we need to tackle the submission of a replacement alternate for the DRB. I hope everybody got the sheet that describes Kristen Dubois as the candidate who was nominated by the Republican Town Committee. Kristen is a Simsbury native. She currently lives in West Simsbury. She's a real estate agent, and she works for Coldwell Banker. Okay. Well, I'll try it again. Can people hear me? No. So, Mark, we need a little more help here. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Has everybody had a chance to read the profile document on Kristen? I guess I just finished my summary. Did anybody have any questions or comments on Kristen's background? Would somebody like to make a motion?
I had a quick question. We don't know anything about like real estate, but we don't know anything about like experience that would relate specifically to the design review board?
No, we don't. What we
Okay.
know is on that sheet of paper.
Okay.
That's what George was received as the nomination, and that's what we have to act on.
Okay.
Okay.
I would just add that probably more information than we've gotten in the past, so.
Great. We're moving in the right direction. So, could I have a motion to approve the nomination of Kristen Dubois to DRB?
Move to approve.
Okay, and a second, please?
Second.
All right. Any other discussion on Kristen? Then we'll vote. All in favor, say aye, please. And those who are opposed, please say nay. Then it's a unanimous yes for Kristen as our newest member on the Design Review Board. Good luck, Kristen. So the next item on our agenda is a site plan application that was submitted by Jensen Bickford Aerospace and Defense. And I see we have a representative from EB here now. So if you'd like to kind of walk us through the...
Yes.
All right, I'll come back to that. So if you would walk us through the proposal for the
Okay, so
site plan.
I'm Gus
And your-
Jasminski from Ensign Bickford. We have
Thank you.
Katie Charla, she's the project manager
Okay.
on the project. So we purchased this building last January. It's 42,000 square feet. We actually used to own it. We're expanding our manufacturing operations. And as part of that, we just can't squeeze all of our test equipment in the building, so we're seeking to add a little over 3,600 square feet addition on the back of the building. The addition, it meets all the setback requirements. We have enough parking. The addition can't be seen from any of the residential properties, Woodland Street or the condos or the apartments. The only spot it can be seen by is the building just to the south, that's Dino. We share the campus with them in Simsbury. So we work with them every day. They understand what we're doing. They're comfortable with what we're doing. It's a little addition on the back. We're just using this similar siding, so it just blends right into the building. And it's basically going to be, it's a one-story building. It's industrial. We're putting our test equipment out in the back.
Is that building visible at all from Hot Meadow Street?
No.
No.
You can't see it from West Street and then Grist Mill Road, which is what it's on. You can't see it from there because there's a driveway that's more than 200 yards long.
I saw in the material there was a reference to the space as a testing room. Is that a fair term for what's going on in there? The new space that's to be constructed, is that for testing?
Yeah, it's, so we have test equipment, so everything, we're making electronic products, everything has to be tested, heated, cooled, and shaken, and it's basically gonna be full of these test chambers that heat and cool our product and test it and shake it.
Did you want to say anything else? Because I'll ask my colleagues if they have questions or comments.
Any questions on?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
When you say testing, like, is there going to be any loud or disturbances or anything that might impact the neighbors?
Inside, there's some noisy equipment, that's why we moved those pieces out to the, into the addition, and we did some additional soundproofing on the walls to keep it inside the building.
Okay, I guess my only
Yeah.
concern would be if there's any concern about amongst the neighbors.
Yeah, no, we're already doing that testing in Simsbury now.
Right.
Any other questions, comments? Then why don't we move ahead with the vote?
So you do have draft motions in front of you this evening.
George, did everybody get a copy of the draft motions?
Everyone did.
Okay, great. So this motion is written to approve the application as it was submitted. And if somebody would like to make that motion, just put your hand up and start reading. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's a little more complicated than that. I didn't realize.
Never been told I'm not loud, so, okay. I would move that the zoning commission approves application ZC number 24-01 of Ensign Bickford Aerospace and Defense, owner for a site plan amendment pursuant to Section 5, Industrial Districts, and Section 11, Site Plan Requirements of the Simsbury zoning regulations for the construction of a plus or minus 3,627 square foot addition at 100 Grist Mill, Assessor's Map G11, Block 103, Lot 005-25, Simsbury, Connecticut 06070, Zone I2. The commission finds that the application for a site plan has met the standards set in Section 5, Industrial Districts, and the site plan criteria in Section 11, and is subject to the following conditions. An administrative zoning permit is required for construction. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall submit 2 sets of Mylars for signature and recordation. The project shall be developed in substantial conformance with the plan set titled Proposed Building Addition dated November 2nd, 2023, with the improvement location and topographical survey dated February 27th, 2023, revised November 2nd, 2023, prepared by Godfrey Hoffman Hodge LLC. Project shall be developed in substantial conformance with the architectural set dated January 1, 2024, prepared by CHK Architects.
Second. Oh, Tony can have it.
So Tony's the second on that motion. Any other questions, comments? Then we're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, say nay. That's a unanimous approval of the Ensign Bickford application.
Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you. Okay. The next item we have for tonight is resumption of the public hearing on application ZZC 2338 of SL Simsbury LLC for a master site development plan for construction of a 580-unit residential development at 200 Hot Meadow Street in Simsbury. This item has been continued from the zoning commission meeting of January 17th. For the benefit of all, way we're going to do this is similar to the way we've handled the other public meetings. I will first be calling for a representative of the owner to share with us the further revisions they've submitted. Commission members can ask questions when the presentation is concluded. I'll then open the floor for comments from the public. As we've done previously, anyone wishing to speak should make their way to the podium in an orderly way to be ready to step up to the podium as soon as the speaker in front of them finishes. And please remember to remain courteous if there's some repetition from our prior meetings on this application. We've had a number of, as everyone knows, public hearings, so some of it is bound to be overlap. Following the public comments, the commission may ask the applicant if they want to make any final comments, and the commission may then want to ask questions of the applicant. But for right now, we're going to get rolling. If there are members of the public who are ready to speak to us, feel free to come forward and take a place right in front of the podium. And we need your name and your address, and then you're free to share your thoughts. Joan, I see you looking over here. Are you ready?
Mr. Chairman, I think you suggested we were going to let the applicant review
Oh,
the
excuse me.
changes to the application first before you hear from the public. Might be a better idea.
Right. Yeah, I've got ahead of myself. Thank you. TJ, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, tonight with us is Laura Krosky, the architect, Paul Vitaliano from VHB, Blake Silverman, the CEO and owner of Silverman, and Holden Sabato, the director of Simsbury operations. We've been pleased to be informed by the DRB, the Planning Commission, the Zoning Commission, and have made very significant changes to plans you've seen today, the plans that you've seen before today. For clarification at the start, we'd like to advise you that this is a unique, first of its kind application. This isn't a zone change. It's not any of the myriad of applications that you hear on a regular basis. This is a modification for the simple purpose of the specific master site development plan for the the Hartford Form-Based Code to be modified. The Hartford Site Form-Based Code is fully enacted and governs the zoning of the site. It contains and provides the specific right to develop the property and for the developer to modify the plan to develop the property, and that is what we have before you. We also wish to note that we participated in this forum and that the uniqueness of the application has encountered a general misunderstanding among some of the community that neither we or the commission have been able to clarify. I'm sorry that I didn't help put guardrails on that. We are sorry this has occurred, so please note, this is not a zone change application. We applied within the bounds of the Hartford Site Form-Based Code that is the zone, and the applicant has existing entitlements under the Hartford Site Form-Based Code. Many of the community remarks, which were critical of and opposed our proposal, seem to presume that the zoning commission had discretion and authority to rezone the property in the derogation of the zoning entitlement of our property. These are the examples: that it should be smaller, that it should be a manufacturing use, that it should be invisible from Hot Meadow Street, that it should be exclusively affordable, that it should not be affordable, that it should be small homes for ownership, not rental, that it should be small starter houses, that it should be one-floor, two-bedroom ranches, that the developer is unworthy and bad, and other ugly and unfair observations. These are all irrelevant. Not many of them are helpful, and by my count, came from less than 72 individuals balanced against 280 families or individuals who are delighted to live in our northern community, and in the context of 24,000 residents and 7,500 separate residences who were happy to let the process continue and work. Some of these comments, such as focusing on ownership as opposed to renters, etc., are not consistent with zoning law and constitutional principles. So what we were most interested in and what we were grateful for were the comments that we received from the zoning commission members. Silverman's philosophy is that balanced against its mission to run a profitable, successful business, is a desire to partner with the town commissioners in the design and approval of ideals which they share from their long and committed awareness of the town and specific nuances which make the town they've invested so much in so successful and so desirable to live in. Because their goal is not the maximum number of units and a path of conflict and litigation is not something they desire, we're here tonight to provide very significant changes to our concept and modification. Back to the bad stuff, one comment, including photographs submitted in evidence, was of a building not even owned by us. It was the Anthology Building, which is a separate parcel upon the campus. Another comment criticized the applicant for not being responsive to the Simsbury Sustainability Committee, and we'd like to clarify that we have talked with Chairman Scully and expressed our appreciation and have agreed to attend and discuss the project with the committee in the upcoming site plan approval process. We're going to participate in that exercise and we're going to benefit from it. Finally, the neighbors and commission comments about possible impacts on Talcott Acres are not balanced and need to be considered in context. The application is totally respectful of the location, massing, and scale of that development, which is a great neighborhood in Simsbury, in that the proposed structure are of a totally complementary scale to the condos. The boundary setbacks are greater from the proposed structure to the property line than from the existing condos to the property line. The spatial internal arrangements of the condo complex are consistent with and as close as the arrangement of the new structures. And the existing Kings Ridge apartment building is closer than any of our buildings of scale and is directly adjacent to the Talcott condos and works very well. So, again, we're very appreciative of the process. We think a lot's been gained by it. I'm sorry that we got so far to so many irrelevant things to talk about, but I do think it's a very large development, and I think it's of great community interest. And so, listening to what you've said and what the Planning Commission said and what the Design Review Board said, I'm going to present Paul Vitaliano from VHB to show the changes that have been made, and then we'll have Laura Krosky. Thank you all for your attention and your good work on this.
Thank you, TJ. Mr. Chairman, Commission members, my name is Paul Vitaliano, civil engineer with VHB. We're located in Weathersfield, Connecticut. Like TJ mentioned, we made some significant comments, and those are the ones I'd like to go through today. First, I'm going to read through a slide that's just is going to basically show all the comments, and then I'll kind of walk through graphically where you see that. George, do you mind progressing 2 slides? Thank you. So the first one is that we are removing the 4th story from 8 of the buildings. To put that in context, that along with some other changes that have been discussed reduces the unit count from 580 to 432, which is a 25% reduction. The other way that we're reducing those units in addition to the 4-story removal is some changes on the southern portion of the site, where if you would remember, I'll show you in a second, we went from single-family homes to duplexes. And also, as you saw last time, we added some commercial zone area, which we added a little more commercial to that, and we'll show you that in a moment. And the final piece that we'll talk about is that we are increasing our affordable allotment from 10% to 15%, concentrated in the apartments. So if you don't mind moving to the next slide, I'll just show you graphically what I mean by that. So the 8 buildings in the center here are the ones that we're removing the 4th story from. The 2 down here were already 3 stories. So basically all the apartment buildings will now be 3 stories, which brings them down approximately 10 feet. If you recall from last time, on the southern side of our site, the duplexes, I think, ended around here, and the rest of this road down here were single-family homes. We've replaced the single-family homes with duplexes to increase that type of unit mix. So everything on this side, once again, is duplexes. Ms. Krosky will speak later to the architectural design to that, but in order to be respectful of the buffer and the boundary to our south, we've introduced a new unit type which has an attached garage, so you don't have the separate detached that we had here, which basically makes you go into the backyard. So we'll discuss that in a moment as well. There were some minor parking reductions too within the green, because of the reduction in units, reduction in parking. So there was some, basically parking along this side of the green, which got removed, which allows us to increase that green width. There was also, angled parking along this road here, which has been removed as well. As far as the commercial zone, what you saw last time, this commercial building on the left side, and we're also introducing a restaurant here in the front parking lot. So this front parking area was for those extra units, and now we're going to basically take advantage of that for a restaurant, which you'll see the architectural renderings in a few moments. And there's actually 5 units, 3 to 5 apartment units above that restaurant as well. George, if you wouldn't mind progressing just quickly on, this is just a blow up of that, just to see that in context. We could always come back to this. And the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is something that would be in the master development plan. If you recall, it's a thick booklet with all the details of our proposal. This is one that we just wanted to extract now to show you. This is the zoning map. So basically what we're doing is the zones that we're introducing. So the yellow zone is the commercial zone. And the green is open space. So it's not a zone. It was meant to just show that there is open space. That's where the trail is that connects north and south and throughout the site too. So once again, the yellow is a commercial zone. The red is our neighborhood transition zone, and the blue is our neighborhood zone. And really, when you look at it this way, this actually brings the plan from a type 4 application to a type 3 application. We're not withdrawing our application. We're not trying to change that. But if you recall, the type 4 application was an alternative compliance application. And the main reason for our alternative compliance was that we did not have the commercial zone to then transition to a neighborhood type zone. So really, when you look at this, this is in keeping with the form-based code. This is exactly what it intended to do. It said to select 2 zones, we selected 3. It's a neighborhood zone transitioning to commercial. So it does change the nature of our application, though we are not formally asking to retract that and change it. It is important to note that this does meet the intentions of the code, and we feel is compliant with the type 3 application. So the commercial zone, I'm gonna hold a little bit and let Laura speak to that, but to the details of it. Actually, George, I'm sorry. Do you mind going back to the site plan again? Maybe that one there was fine. So once again, the commercial building that you folks saw before, which is intended to be flexible space. Obviously, we need time to have look into different tenants and who we might get. We envision that could be anything from, let's say, a bakery that perhaps produces their baked goods there and also has a store in the front that they could sell it. It could be a batting cage, for example. It could be a yoga studio. It could be office space. It could be anything. So what we did is we wanted to kind of have that on the northern part of the site where we know we have logistical things to do with that building. There's going to be loading. There's going to be access points for the employees, things like that. So we wanted to separate that from our residential buildings, and that's why it's on the northern part of the site and forming a commercial zone with the restaurant. When we located this restaurant, we looked at different locations for it throughout that front parking area. We settled on this part, one to kind of frame an entrance as you come into the site, but also from a view shed standpoint, it actually is falling in line with where the building behind it was. So we kind of toyed with having it on this side or somewhere else, and it actually had more of an impact to the view.
Connectivity to the north south.
Again, there in a second. Yep. So the next thing I'd like to talk about, I'm sorry, George, if you could continue ahead past the zoning map. This is a very, very rudimentary sketch. I apologize for that. We just thought last minute it'd be good to kind of show this. The site plan obviously is the older plan, so please keep that in mind. What this is meant to show is connectivity between the north and the south. That's something that is very important to folks, and we feel that having that commercial element kind of adds a new dimension to that. So what the red line is showing is that obviously we have the trail that loops our northern site. We have the trail across the front. We know we cross the street to connect to the Canal Greenway. But along our site frontage, we're going to have the connection between north and south that's going to come through here. There was a comment which we always agreed to do, is to extend this trail all the way to the south. We're going to be mindful of the berm that's there too. We don't want to disturb that berm. But then from that trail connection, we're going to have connections into the neighborhood. So this is obviously just kind of graphical. There's going to be a connection here, which then connects to our sidewalk system, a connection here, which connects to the commercial component. So you can envision someone that's from their apartment or the house, basically goes to the commercial site, picks up a cup of coffee, and perhaps walks their kid to the daycare at the Goddard site, which is under construction now, and then walks back and continues on their day. So we really just want to show that we're maintaining that. We're encouraging that connectivity because, as you recall from my first presentation, there's sidewalk connections throughout the development itself. That's true of the south and the north. So with that, that's really a quick view of our changes. I'd be happy to speak to any of the site questions, or else I can hand it over to Ms. Krosky and she could go through the architectural components. Sure.
You mentioned a loading zone or a loading delivery area or something like that, like?
What I was trying to basically express is that when you have a commercial type use, you have to expect that you're gonna have those types of things, right? The back of house, they're called kind of options, right? So, I'm basically saying that when we put the commercial in this area, it was a good way to isolate that where we could kind of have our commercial area together. We were asked at DRB, and we also looked at it internally about mixing the retail within the residential, maybe ground floor or something like that. And it really kind of creates a logistics nightmare when you have ground floor retail, and then you have to think that in the back of that building, you need some type of loading, you need grease traps, you need dumpsters. And it really kind of eats away at the residential mix that we're trying to do. So we felt it was best to basically create a zone to the north that would contain all that commercial.
Okay, my concern was just about noise, like, trucks backing up, the beeping, et cetera.
If there's going to be commercial, you're going to have to live with those things, correct? But obviously, when it's here, we're at the north, we're away from any of the other residentials, for example, to the south. So that is mitigated by being where it is.
I have another question.
Sure.
One of the points I had inquired about last time was with regard to transportation. And as I've mentioned a number of times, we have a big transportation problem within Simsbury as in public transportation. Has there been any consideration to how to make this accessible for someone who does not have a car?
That's a great question. We'd be happy to look into that further at site plan. I know that for the north, we did look at that. We talked to the transit authority, and they said there was not enough density for them to basically sustain a site, a stop within it. So we did broach that subject to the north. We'll be happy to revisit that conversation, see if anything has changed.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
Okay.
Paul, could you comment on the termination point at the south end of the red trail that was on another slide? I don't know
sure.
quite what happened
Sure.
to it.
And like I said, Mr. Chairman, this is rudimentary sketch. But do you want me to start at the top, at the north?
No,
Like down here?
Yeah, down
So
there.
basically, if you look at our current site plan, our trail comes to here. Because what we were gonna do is, we know from our DOT approval at the first time we got approved at DOT, it was basically to improve this crossing here. So our trail was terminating basically at this crossing, at the traffic signal. I don't recall if it was a staff comment or if it was during one of the commission comments, we were asked to extend that trail all the way along our frontage, and that's something that, we agreed to do. So it's basically continuing past our entrance and just going out here to our southern property line. We are gonna maintain the existing berm that's over here, so that's why we're probably gonna be tucked in, closer to Hot Meadow, but it's basically extending along our frontage. It will terminate at our property line though.
Now, is that the area that you were anticipating would have to be narrower?
No, sir. No, that was here at the wetland crossing.
Oh, okay.
And that is something that, when we asked for your final approval, there was a comment there that we were asking that you allow us to narrow that down. We're probably gonna refine that to just ask you that if you don't wanna narrow that down, which is something I think was a comment that was out there, just that, we leave it to discretion of the Wetland Commission. So if the Wetland Commission objects to that, to us not narrowing down, that we don't have to return here to change that. We'd be happy to explore the not narrowing down portion, but we don't want to speak for the Wetland Commission in case they say that they're not happy with those impacts. We just don't want to be in a circular pattern where we have to come back to you for that.
I think at an earlier meeting, you said you were looking at a 4-year construction schedule. Am I remembering that
I could
correctly,
ask,
or-
That's around about right, yes. Obviously depends on market demand and things.
Right, and so how does this impact that construction schedule by reducing the size of the project?
I don't think it would really. I don't think that would change it, no, sir.
I have a couple questions. So I'm curious, can you just explain to me the reasoning with the duplexes? Was that just to make up for some of the properties that were lost by taking the third story off? Or why did you choose to extend the duplexes
Sure.
on that side?
No, it wasn't really to kind of make up for that. Like I said, we still are having a 25% reduction in units. It was really kind of some of the feedback we were hearing was about the different use types that we had, the different product types. And we're getting the impression from a lot of folks that the duplex was something that was kind of low inventory in Simsbury. It was kind of unique to Simsbury, and we really didn't have that many of them here. We were kind of asked to increase that number. So it was really a comment that we felt we were reacting to what we were hearing.
Okay, and also, in the other. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Also, just on the south side, on the right-hand side on the picture, on one of the other pictures, it looked like there were trees intended. I know that that's one of the concerns of some of the neighbors, so were you intending to plant trees in that area, or?
So, I think we've spoken about this a couple times and maybe kind of give some mixed messages on it. So I did want to clarify, we could say it again, just clarify. Right now, when you're at the edge of the parking lot, if you're out there in the site, there's a berm right at the edge of the parking lot, and that berm's planted. If you walk through that berm, you go down the berm, there's plantings along the property line.
Mm-hmm.
We will have to take down the berm and the plantings on the berm. We're gonna do our best to maintain the plantings, which are very mature, obviously, at this point, that are on the property line. And whatever is taken down on the berm, we're gonna supplement back, we're gonna replant it ourselves too. But I think at one point I said that we would clear all of it. I believe I said that probably 2 meetings ago. My engineer corrected me and said that there is a dense line of vegetation on the property line when you get beyond the berm that we're gonna work very hard to maintain, and we think we can.
Okay, and then one last thing, I know these are all little superficial
No,
things,
it's
so,
fine.
but in the front, if you can show me how, I know you referenced the berm in the bottom right corner, but as far as the front is concerned, I'm picturing the property now, and there is, a substantial berm, like, how much of that is staying and how much of that is going to be going away?
So obviously, when we're at this level at master plan, we haven't really gotten too much into the topography. So our intentions are, we already kind of know as engineers looking at it that on this side, I'm sorry, if you look
Yep.
on this side,
Yep.
that's gonna have to most likely come down. But
Okay.
that's kind of the smaller berm. The berms on this side, since they're away from the development, and that was intentional, the way we did this, is to try to maintain the one that's here and then the vegetation that's here. So that's why these are stopping where they are, is because our intent is to try to maintain these as much as possible. And if we can't maintain them, we're gonna rebuild them, but we feel that without getting into the design, we feel that we'll be able to maintain them with this layout.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
So I can't let that go. What does that mean? That if you have to level them, you're going to rebuild them? Berms?
Sure, that's something we did on the north side. We built small berms there. Sometimes, granted, the berms here are larger, but like, for example,
Right.
on this side, a 2 to 3 or 4 foot high berm could easily screen that parking. So those are things that could be rebuilt.
Are you gonna add in landscaping when you rebuild that berm?
Obviously, we want to give the duplexes some backyard. So I'm not saying we're going to build a berm on this side, but this will be replanted. But if we build berms here and here, those would be planted.
And will the trees be consistent with the height of the trees that are going to be cut down?
Well, that's impossible. I mean, the trees out there now are, 30, 40, 50 feet high. So those are the ones we're going to want to maintain. But we'll pick species that we know will grow over time and pick those appropriately.
Could you point out on the plan where the community gathering areas are kind of dispersed throughout?
Sure. So one of the areas that we had was the main area is essential green here, and similar to the north, right? So it's a focal point when you come in, but it also is, this is the size of a football field. So that's really the main gathering space, and it leads to the clubhouse. And the clubhouse, don't recall if we got into detail here or at design review a while ago, but it's basically It's meant to be an amenity space where you could even rent out a room if you want to have a party. There's going to be games and things in there. We could get into detail about the pool and showers and things of that nature. I don't want to speak too detailed, but if you do have those questions, we could answer that. And obviously the pool next to it, obviously still in flux, but we did talk about different recreational. You've probably seen different variations. Maybe that's why you're questioning it. But on some plans, we've shown like pickleball courts and tennis courts and things like that. So this is going to be our main community area here, which is meant to buffer from the single-family homes. There's a walkway from the single-family homes actually to get there easier. But this is our main resident space for use, and then also the green here. And then there's pockets of green too, like this here. Maybe not so much now that we've changed this, but it's just there's kind of green throughout as well. And then obviously connections to the trail, so that's really the very big amenity for the site.
But your reference to community amenities applies to the residents of
Only to the
the
residents
development.
here.
Right, that's not
Of
to
this
the
community,
larger
right.
community.
Right, I mean, the commercial zone will be basically what's inviting the rest of the public to come in. I think when you see the restaurant, we'll show you in a few moments, that's where we're kind of talking about, we're inviting the community in, also with the rest of the commercial space. That would be kind of the interactive part, and also obviously the trail could be used by everyone.
I have one last question. So I was not able to make the last meeting, but I do appreciate it. It looks like you guys really responded to a lot of our concerns, which I do appreciate. But the one biggest concern, which I believe we got a hard no on, was having some owner-owned properties. And I just want to kind of revisit that because I know that that's not something that is in your standard business model. But I do think it's very important to us and to the residents of the town.
So that's something, I'm gonna introduce Blake Silverman here. He's the owner and he can speak to that.
How you doing? Nice to see everybody. Nice to meet some of you. So we do not build for sale housing, but that's really not the reason why we're not building in here. We obviously did some research in the last meeting, talked to some home builders. The issue here is just price. Cost of construction is fairly high. The amount of money that these home builders would need to sell these are not feasible in this community. So for us, it's just not really an option.
And there's no way to accommodate that in some way?
I mean, to operate at a loss, that wouldn't benefit anybody, right?
yeah.
So, I mean, we did listen to it. And again, I don't, as a developer, I don't mind selling to a for sale builder, but, it just wasn't feasible here. The cost of construction is through the roof, as everybody knows, and the yield that you would get for a house behind apartments wouldn't be conducive to that, so.
Thank you.
So obviously, I'm sorry, go ahead, sorry.
So other than the center that you said is green space, the Hartford Form-Based Code asks for parks, passive recreation. So what other spaces do you have for that?
So obviously the central green is kind of left to kind of develop organically. What I mean by that is to see how the community reacts and how they want to use that. This entire area back here, so all of this will be this open green space. So like I said, I apologize, it's on different plans, but all of this could be used out for whether it's playscapes or pickleball courts or things of that nature. Obviously our pool is here. So everything in this quad is meant for that. Some of the pocket parks really are kind of just like the corner treatments here that kind of could evolve as well. Like here, and here. Now maybe not so much that with the commercial. And then between the single family homes, right now we really did not want to do a park here. This was a comment that came up from other commissions that we really want to have that be more of a natural, densely vegetated buffer or kind of green stretch. That was something probably more from the Inland Wetlands Commission brought that up. So really, Jackie, to answer your question, it is a central green and then this entire quad in here.
If you can, if this goes farther, if you could give us more detail on that down the line, so we can see that develop, because we have not seen anything of that space that you just highlighted or any of the other corner spaces, just so we can get a visual of what that might be?
I think it's probably, it doesn't answer your question, but I think on the colored rendering is where you see like the pickleball courts and things like that on the one, probably the slide prior to this, but I understand your question, thank you.
Keeping the theme of like recreational spaces, is there any access to the river at any point or anywhere you can see that being possible?
Unfortunately not. That's something that we would have loved to do too. There's a significant amount of wetlands, of natural NDDP issues. We tried for years to make a connection on the north.
Yeah.
Tried many different avenues to do it. We haven't given up on it completely, but it's a very long road.
Yeah.
Involves the DEP and floodplain and several other things. And if it would be done, if it does get done, it most likely would happen at the north. It's more challenging here on this site
Okay.
than on the north.
But
All right, thanks.
did we get that right? A couple of years ago, we approved a request that you fellows made to provide access for the fire department who wants to be able to get a boat in through that north site development. Did
I
that
don't-
never get built?
I don't think it was approved.
It was
I don't-
approved,
Do you remember that?
for sure. Absolutely.
Well,
But-
it did not
Okay.
progress.
Well.
Go ahead.
We continue in dialogue with the fire company on that. We're willing to do
You
it. They're
continue
gonna be
what?
the applicant. And they got you, it's a long DE process.
So it's underway, but it's not done.
It's well, it's semi-active, but we're still willing to do it. We talked to the fire marshal about it not too long ago. I mean, that's something that we want to do. If, in certain flood conditions, the fire department tells me that if the certain flood conditions, they need an access there because they can't get a boat under the two bridges to get the property along the way. I mean, it's a serious issue. We support it.
It doesn't sound like it's being treated seriously. We approved it, I think it was 2 years ago, DJ. And now we hear that, well, it's somebody's back burner and it's a serious issue. Well, you know, okay, enough on that. It's not there.
But the approval envisions that the fire company will be the applicant. We support them and we will support them. And we will proceed with that when there's a clear path to be able to get it.
So, yeah, the fire department was the lead on that. They were the applicant, and it was basically, they were kind of driving the boat on what they needed to do there, and we were basically supplying the land and kind of helping them out, but they need to be the driving force on that.
Have they gone in front of Deep yet? Do you know?
No, they have not, no.
That's going to probably take a while.
So obviously, I could come back, but right now I can hand it over to Laura, and she could talk about some of the architecture.
Good evening, Laura Krosky of Krosky Architects, the design architect and architect of record on the project. So taking a look at some of our newest building types and revisions, this is the duplex building type 3. Previous to this, you've seen 2 other duplex building types with detached garages. This is a new type that has attached garages. As you can see in the floor plan, there is a single car garage on either side of the duplex building. This provides direct access into the unit from the garage space, and the garages are set back nicely from the front facade. And this is just a different building type that allows for us to put duplexes along that southern loop, as well as minimize the impact to the site buffer in that location. The floor plans here are very similar to the other duplexes that you've seen. They provide 2 units with approximately 1,400 square feet each, living space on the first floor and bedrooms up on the second floor. This is the commercial building, which many of you saw at last meeting. This is a concept still of the commercial building. It's designed taking cues from materiality of the apartment buildings, as well as differentiating itself because it is a different use. This will provide approximately 27,000 square feet of flexible commercial space for various tenants, and the various tenants will translate into various storefront entries, which will help to break up the length of the building. This will be a one-story building with a flat roof, but the height of the building is approximately 25 square feet, so it allows for a look of a two-story building, which will also provide us with potential for mezzanine space for any of the residents or tenants. This is a new building type. This is the restaurant building that is now at the front portion of the site. Hearing from the commission, we're proposing this as an amenity not only to the Talcott Ridge South, but for the larger community. This is a 5,000 square foot restaurant on the first floor with an outdoor patio with a wood pergola for outdoor dining with views to the ridge and the Hugh Blind Tower. And the second floor and third floor here, which is built into the roof, would provide approximately 5 townhouse-style dwelling units above the restaurant. Living space would be on the second floor, and as I mentioned, the third floor portion here built into the roof would provide the bedrooms for those units, and the dormers, as you can see on the roof, would be the functional bedroom windows. The finishes on this building would exhibit a stone veneer to reference the brownstone commonly found in town, shingle siding and board and batten with double hung divided light windows to complement a traditional architectural character. And there takes cues from the rest of the community as well, with copper colored standing seam metal roofs over the building entries. And this provides reference to the apartment buildings and begins to tie in all of the different buildings together for a common character for the development. That is all I have, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
Are all the duplexes the same size?
There's 3 different building types. In that southern loop, those are the same size, yes.
They all have 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms? Or not?
They are all a 2-bedroom
All
product.
2 bedrooms?
I have a question. In this building, is there accessibility? Are there elevators to the second floor?
We haven't gotten quite that far yet, but there wouldn't necessarily need to be an elevator in here because what's on the second floors is units. So they, if we didn't have an elevator here, those would just be non-accessible units. But the remainder of the units throughout the site provide accessible units. The first floor, all the amenities of the restaurant would be accessible.
Thank you.
And did you tell us what the height of this building is? Whoops.
I did
The
not.
height of the building?
I have not. It would be a 2.5 story, so probably in the way of about 25 to 30 feet to the midpoint of the ridge line.
To the midpoint of the ridge line?
Correct. So with a pitched roof, it would, the height taken from the midpoint is approximately 25 to 30.
So if you're looking at a gable end,
Mhm.
it's about the average of what appears to be the peak and the gutters, for instance. It's in
Correct.
there. It's not the peak. The peak and the height are not the same thing.
Correct.
Okay. What's the peak, roughly?
Probably around 35 then, 35 feet.
Is it taller than the other buildings?
No, it's about, the other ones are 3 stories with a pitched roof. So this
Okay.
is 2 stories with a pitched roof.
Okay, thanks.
Well, there was a point made earlier about the reduction in the height of the buildings when the 4th floor was, erased. But we didn't hear what the height is now and what the height is going to be. I mean, what it was at 4 stories. What's the actual height to the peak of the roof versus the buildings that are replacing them?
Right, so there were previously a mix of 3 and 4 story buildings. The 3-story buildings have a height of about 47 feet, and the 4-story were closer to 53.
Not the architect's definition of height, but the layperson. What's the top of the thing? 53 feet is what you were saying for four stories?
No, that would be to the midpoint of the ridge. So the peak would be somewhere closer to 55 or upwards to 60.
I had suggested in the comments that we offered at our last meeting that consideration be given to moving the locations of some of these buildings. So the concept might be that the taller buildings would be in the rear towards the river, as it was the case with the Hartford, and the smaller buildings be in the front. And I don't know if you all talked that out and decided, I'm crazy, but I don't see that change. So does that mean you don't want to do it? It's not practical? You don't like it?
It is an approach. It was a different approach than what we had taken here. The intent here was for a higher density closer to a main road, and then as it progressed outwards to the buffers, it was getting a lower density. That's where more of the single families were, from higher to lower, versus the suggestion of lower to higher.
It worked out pretty well for the Hartford and for the town. Was your firm the architects on the north site too?
No, we did not. We were not involved in that.
They didn't like that concept either, of putting the taller building in the back. Thank you.
On the side, the other commercial building, sorry, Tucker, you can go next. The other one, have you thought about doing like a colonnade or some sort of covered access so that people could like walk from thing to thing, or have like some cover other than like the one canopy over the center doorway there?
It's a possibility, but this is still very much in its early phases of development, so we will look at further design details like that as it progresses.
Okay, it is in the Hartford code that is a desired trait, so
Okay.
just something to look at.
Yeah, so I saw that you had put in the duplexes, which was one of my recommendations, so thank you. Did you say all the duplexes are 2-bedroom,
Yes.
or just the new ones?
All of the duplexes are 2-bedroom.
Okay. And was the multifamily, the way that single-family, multifamily, commercial works, that's, can you go through a little bit like what you're trying to do with, like, is that the transition zone? Is that the idea, is that it's kind of like a mini like suburb to denser to commercial? Is that kind of I'm trying to understand the kind of the design philosophy.
Yeah, so basically I understand, Bruce, what you were saying as far as an approach, and this is keeping in with the north side, which was really kind of something that the code does kind of tell you to do. It wants you to transition. So really like a higher to lower density is kind of was the approach we took, and it kind of is, I don't want to say it's implied in the code, but it kind of is. So especially because when you have the commercial zone, the mixed use the neighborhood transition is to transition from a commercial
Right.
to then go to a neighborhood, right? So, and that was a component that we were missing before that made us a type 4 application. We
Right.
wanted to just change that. So obviously the commercial's got to be closer to the front,
Right.
right? So at that point, you're transitioning to the lowest density. So it kind of works out where if you're going to have the commercial up front and you're going to transition to the lower, you're going to have the apartments and that higher density next to that.
Right. So the higher density stuff is closer to the commercial. The single family stuff is further away. The implication being they probably are more likely to own more cars and stuff like they're just. Well, I mean, it's designed to try to be walkable, right?
Well, for example, I know this isn't part of your question, but I just wanted to clarify what
Yeah.
I was saying. So for example, if we flip these two zones,
Yeah.
it actually would not be compliant with the code because there wouldn't be a transition from commercial to neighborhood.
Okay, that's what I was getting to. There's sidewalks up to the single family area. That's all.
There's sidewalks throughout. That's something we took a lot of pride in
Okay.
the north. And there's sidewalks throughout
Okay.
this neighborhood as well. There's also a cut through here through the middle.
Oh,
So
okay.
that you don't have to go all the way around if you're trying to get to the pool or something like that. But basically, I think the only spot that doesn't have double sidewalk connection is this little kind of
Right.
dead end down here when you get to the corner. But
Okay.
otherwise, there's double sidewalks throughout.
All right, thank you.
Can you speak to that commercial again? So did you just say to Tucker that you cannot move the yellow? Where?
Yeah, I'm saying from the zones that we're using,
Yep.
the red zone is a neighborhood transition. It's transitioning from commercial to then a neighborhood. So for example, if the red and the blue were switched, it wouldn't meet the code because the red is the transition. So the red needs to be against the commercial to then go to a lower density.
Right.
So could you put the yellow in the middle, not have it be a strip mall? I'm envisioning something else, but that it would be more of a village. So your commercial's in the center for people to walk to. So a coffee house, something like that in the center.
Wouldn't you sacrifice, not to do his job for him, but wouldn't you sacrifice the green space in the middle if you did that? You would then push the green space to like the outside,
Well,
so
then
then
you
now
could
that's
put
less
green
accessible.
space over there. I mean, it would
Well-
be very walkable to your point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
and in the
sure.
center,
There are
Please.
difficult planning and design issues, but the bottom line is that there aren't enough rooftops surrounding that middle area to support a commercial area. And the commercial area would have to draw not only from the development, but also from the north and also from the community. There's not enough energy to support a commercial coffee shop in the middle of that.
Or visibility.
Well,
then how's it gonna support a strip mall on the side?
Well, that's closer to, it's
No,
closer
that's
to.
that's not funny. It supports that because it has access to the public street, and we're designing it flex. What? And it's not a strip mall either.
It looks like it.
It's of the design, it's of the configuration of the strip. So I got you.
Okay.
But for that to be economically viable, it needs to be on the road.
But it's not.
Oh, yes, it is.
Sure. So just to be clear, this is a flex type product. We built this in 20 states. It is for people who have a business. Your plumber, right? The plumber needs to operate somewhere, right? Plumber usually has a storefront. Maybe they have a little bit of a retail. That is the idea behind this thing. So when you're saying a strip mall, it's actually a flex space building. Nothing to do with strip mall. We've seen the need, right? We own product everywhere. We've seen the need for people who have businesses, right? They want to both have a front and a back, right? Maybe that's your person who sells eBay products, right? They have a front store, right? Where people come in, right? They say, I want to sell this on eBay, and the back, you have pick packers to do it, right? That
So
is the
this
idea
isn't
behind
meant to
this.
be a coffee shop in this,
It could be, so by me where I live in New Jersey, there's a coffee roaster, right? He has roasting machines in his back, and he has a coffee spot in front. So that is kind of the concept behind this. What we found in the community is there's no one to rent traditional retail space, right? We've been here, we've tried, right, and we failed, right? So what we said is, what has worked in other communities, right, where, there's a necessity for people who have businesses to be able to open. So that's what is behind this.
well, wait a minute.
go ahead.
I think we're going a little too fast here for me. What we agree with is you have failed to produce a mixed-use development in the north site. There's no commercial development there. None. Those buildings that are supposed to be commercial aren't even finished. And the one has been sitting there shelled, the one to the south, for how many years?
Well, we have a tenant now, sir.
Well, that's a great thing. We're talking about construction of 4 years. Was that the number that was suggested here? And not denied. Could be longer. And then you're going to start working on finding tenants for these commercial spaces. I'm not that concerned about, and we've talked about this before, but the notion of retail, it's not like we're all that concerned about what type of commercial enterprise is in there. What we're looking for is mixed use so that you get a vibrancy, a sense of some excitement around here. We're trying to add something to the community, not just another sea of apartments. We got plenty of those. Something that the community would be proud of and that would enhance the town and not just that. So we're very interested in whatever you want to call it, but we call it mixed use. with an intent to create vibrancy. But something in the commercial, you know this, but pages 50 through 58 of that code list 400 different types of enterprises that could be in this space, 200 Hot Meadow Street. And if you're only, residential is the top two lines on the first page, and then it never is mentioned again. The idea that there could be 400 alternatives, now, some of them are industrial because it's also capable of industrial development. It's I-2 zone. So, it's just, it doesn't feel likely that the most vigorous effort possible was made, and you just can't find, But I don't want to moan about the north site. That's, what's done is done over there. But to the extent that you use it as a model for what you're trying to do on the south site, tread lightly.
I understand that, but, we need to build a successful project. Otherwise, we're going to be able to pay taxes and other things, right? So I need to be a success wherever we go, right? And I need to make sure our projects are successful.
I hear you.
I'm telling you how I believe, right, that we can be successful because we've done it in 21 states. And I wish, I'll be honest with everybody, I wish I could put a coffee shop and 6 restaurants. We just haven't seen the need for it, right? And what we tried to do with the restaurant concept was take a loss, right, and accommodate, right, a community space for the town, because we don't even see this demand for that. But at some point, right, if I discount the rent to nothing, right, I'll be able to attract somebody. And that's honestly how we attracted the Goddard School, by doing just that. So we want to be cognizant of the town, right, and we want to do our best for the town by bringing in retail, but we just haven't seen the need. The best thing we could do, by the way, for our own pockets, right, is to rent retail, right? It's cheaper, right, it's easier, right, and it's quicker.
We don't know that.
Right.
We're just listening to you
Right,
tell us.
well, I'm take my word for it, right? So the fact
Yeah, right.
the fact of the matter is that, we want to do right, and we've been this successful on the last parcel. What we've struggled with is a retail. So that's why we're trying to be cognizant, fit in the form-based code, right? And be able to sort of offer a product that we believe people want.
So you guys have presented to us documentation about all of the spending, all of the community advantages of these units, and that these people are going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on restaurants in Simsbury. So, but now you're telling me that this neighborhood can't support, it's a restaurant. So I'm a little bit confused by the information provided, because you're telling me that it can't support retail and restaurant, but at the same time, hundreds of thousands of dollars are coming out of these people's pockets to restaurants. So it seems like that restaurant could be wildly successful by that model.
Right. No, I didn't believe, hopefully that's correct. You do have a lot of retail here. I haven't counted what's empty anymore. I haven't been up here, in the last few months, but you do have retail, right? So what we've heard the objection to that is, well, we like the store here because that's a restaurant that went out of business, so we'll take that restaurant, right? So again, to your point, I agree. I think we'll bring more people, which will help your retail in your community. I just don't necessarily think that's going to yield to more retail in the community.
All right. I saw you raise the affordability percentage, the inclusionary zoning from 10 to 15.
Yes.
How many, with the new numbers, how many affordable units is that?
60.
Yes, about 65.
65 new affordable units, plus duplexes with 2 bedrooms that could theoretically be naturally occurring affordable if people had roommates. Do you guys, you don't have rules against roommates in your developments?
Not
No.
a lot of the communities have roommates.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. I believe the code. What is the code for affordability? Is
0.
For the restaurant, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see you submitted any floor plans or anything like that. Is that something that, if we extended the public hearing to the next meeting, would that be something you'd be able to provide?
No, that's something that would take a lot of detailed design for the site plan level. We'd obviously go back to design review at that point, but that would have to wait till site plan.
And I forgive my ignorance with floor plans, would you be able to do like a rough floor plan, or is that something where you'd need like a specific and then take that full time?
I'm curious kind of what you'd want to see in that floor plan. Like, maybe there's a way to answer your question. Is there a certain?
I mean, I'd just kind of like to see a rough idea of, you say you think you can get about 5. I'd like to see like a kind of is 5 actually realistic? Is it,
Okay.
you know, like kind of just a roughed out?
I thought you were referring to the restaurant, that's why I'm glad.
Oh, no, sorry.
I'm asking that.
I mean, that'd be nice too, but mostly the upper.
Right,
Sorry.
and that estimate is developed from the width and the depth of the building, so when we work up a mass, like we've shown today, understanding, our experience with housing allows us to understand that based on the width and the depth, and also the floor plate, how that would lay out. So it is an estimate, but that would be, a real estimate.
And
Okay.
I think our intent of today really was to show you kind of what it would look like from the exterior, more so than.
Yeah, no, it makes
the
sense,
interior,
but
you know.
I was hoping for maybe a little more, but it makes sense that you can't.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, anything else, or?
Are you gonna do anything with an updated visual study of what we could expect the place to look like against the mountain that we can't see? Yeah.
If we don't want any visual studies, whatever we're doing next. If we proceed and we move forward and as part of the site plan, the commission wants them, you'll get them. You know, this is a very preliminary, and a unique application. This is an application to tweak the master development site plan so that we can proceed to get into the guts of doing a project there. And it's not to select who's going to be tenants, and we have absolutely subscribed to your desire to not change it so it's strictly residential and to put in a substantial and significant commercial component.
That's not what I asked for. I asked that we get a mixed-use development here. And that we had, in that combination, that we would produce some vibrancy. We'd have a center, like a village center. We talked briefly about go look at Terriffill. We said, go look at Terriffill for an example of, a village kind of a setting. I'm not sure we're all thinking of the same thing when we hear those words. But
I think.
I don't want you to misinterpret what I said to be a reflection of what you just said. It's not. Okay. Did you want to add anything else? Or we'll have the public comments. Anybody else on your team want to say something, TJ? Okay.
When we think of vibrancy here, we think of Blueback Square. Blueback Square has 30,000 people within a 5-mile drive time. 30,000. For that to be vibrant and successful, the town of West Hartford had to build a parking garage of 400 spaces and finance it.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't Blueback Square, and there is not critical mass with respect to, for a mixed-use, vibrant circumstance like that.
Yeah.
And we were hopeful that we'd be successful with a coffee shop and a restaurant right at the beginning down in the, and you know that we were hopeful to be that. We committed, but it was not successful. It's a market failure, and we're very interested in the commission. We've been very interested in everything that you've said, but we need good, hard information, a good study to show what the viability would be for mixed use in that site. I think what you have in your mind for mixed use is something beyond the capability of that site to push.
I'm not suggesting anything other than the code, the 66-page code that defines what can be done on that site. Uses reference to mixed use.
It
uses
defines-
the words vibrancy.
It
and
defines the
it doesn't say it's
capabilities,
too
but it
small.
doesn't design the site.
Well, you bought it with that 66-page code in place, and now you say you can't do it. You'll have to give that consideration.
We can do things within the code, and we feel that what we submitted you to start this process fully
Okay.
complied with the code, except for the tweak we needed to take out the commercial space. And you should, if you think that that's incorrect, you should check with your counsel and see what your entitlements are to
We don't
interfere with the entitlements.
need, we don't need
you know.
legal advice from you, TJ, but I appreciate the thought.
No, Mr. Chair, I was just suggesting it's about 8:10 or 8:12. I'd go ahead and get started on the public hearing.
Thank you. So we'll move ahead here. Who'd like to be first to speak in terms of public comment time? Just come right up to the microphone. Introduce yourself and your address.
Joan Coe, 26 Whitcomb Drive. There's a song, quote, "Know when to walk and know when to walk away." The Silverman Group is defending a plan, hearing after hearing, that is inconsistent with the contract they signed with the town and the Hartford Insurance Financial Group, that the land must be developed as a mixed-use development. Over the years, the financial climate has changed and commercial buildings are not viable financially at the present time. The present site plan submission appears to be a false hope that the applicant can persuade the zoning commission to understand their dilemma to develop the property under the present conditions. The zoning commission is not a social service organization that uses the economic development tool to enhance a failed project and allow the developer to maximize their profits at the expense of the residents. The project as presented does not meet the restrictions imposed on the Silverman Group and should be denied. The Silverman Group has several options. They can withdraw the site plan, sell the property for industrial use, or swap the land with another developer that eliminates the original caveat of mixed use and use the industrial designation of the land. As a result of my questions posed to AI on what could be developed on 70 acres of industrial land, one of the results was a theme park. An indoor-outdoor theme park will increase the tax base without imposing an impact on the town resources. Denying the Silverman's Group application has many positive options for future development. It is time to think out of the box and come up with solutions that balance the need for economic development without negatively impacting the town. The application as presented tonight should be denied, and all of my comments will be posted on Simsbury Patch and Twitter at Joan Coe. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Todd Angus, Redstone Drive, 30-year resident of town. Want to address the man to my left here. He said that our comments were irrelevant, the townspeople comments. They're irrelevant to you, sir, maybe, but not to us. We live here.
Excuse me, you need to address the.
Yes,
the
and
commission.
we'll have to live there, not irrelevant to the townspeople. They'll have to live with whatever is built here. I, for one, am not a big fan of the first phase of the project that's already been built. I feel that between the Avon line and Weetag Fire Department, there are roughly 1,000 small footprint, quote, smaller affordable places. I know the rents are quite high in some of these. So I don't know as if we have a problem with housing as much as we have a problem with affordability. I'm not sure that the Simsbury financials support the case of building more. Simsbury population grew about 5% from 2010 to 2020. And Connecticut lost 1%. So we're doing pretty good. And our recent financial statements show that our revenues are good and that our control of spending of services has been pretty well under control. We're not like a dying mill town that needs to bring people in to restore vibrancy, right? We're growing at a good pace. Third point I want to make is that the plan of conservation and development on pages 37 and 38 charge the zoning commission and the planning commission to implement low-impact development strategies because the people of this town in the 2022 POCD survey told 80% of the people of this town said that one of the highest priorities, if not the highest priority, was the protection of open space and natural resources. There were only 9% of the respondents of that survey that responded that we needed more affordable housing and more housing in general. Housing was not a big issue. I want to just, leave with a question of who asked for this, right? I mean, I think we know that the developers stand to make a lot of money with a good project. And, with all due respect, good for you for trying, right? But I think the town, I don't think we need this. So I think there could be alternate uses. Let's be more responsible with the use of this land. Thank you.
Yeah. Excuse me just a moment. I didn't take the time tonight to reread the guidelines that I shared with the first public meeting on this project, but we really need to refrain from demonstration, the clapping. It's understandable, but it's rude to the speakers, to our guests who are here, who are investors in Simsbury, and I would appreciate it if you could, refrain from doing that. But thank you. Oh, please go right ahead.
I'm
Sorry for
James
the interruption.
Conweiler. I live at 12 Edgewood Court. I've moved to Simsbury in May of last year, and I'm delighted to be a resident of this community. Unfortunately, I think the size of the development is inappropriate for our town. This type of urban density is not appropriate for a rural and ex-urban environment. And the proposal adversely impacts the character of the town. I had an opportunity to drive through the neighboring development, I guess it's Ridge at Talcott Mountain, and there is little aesthetic appeal in my opinion. The beauty of this area are the woods, not oversized and overcrowded apartment blocks. The proposed development would be more of the same on a much larger scale. I'm glad that they've eliminated the 4-story buildings. It's definitely inappropriate for Simsbury, and perhaps the commission should revise the zoning regulations to reduce the current height limit. At the last meeting, neighbors noted that the proposed development of more than 500 units, which of course has been reduced, would increase congestion. This should be avoided. Perhaps the developer would be willing to scale back the size of the development and limit it to perhaps as few as 100 or so single-family units. And I know that one of the men spoke here about the cost of small houses, but perhaps manufactured houses, factory-built houses, would be a suitable solution to the cost of small houses. Certainly they can be built with any kind of aesthetic appeal. The community can't absorb the impact of this development. It's a huge strain on municipal services. And I'm sure that the developer would not want it to help fund a 4-lane Hot Meadow Street, which might be necessary if this development went forward. And also that was something that was presented at the last meeting was the economic assumptions. And I think those numbers should be checked and compared using different scenarios. And something that no one has mentioned is the flood risk. This project is in close proximity to the Farmington River. I'm sure there must be a floodplain map developed by the Corps of Engineers, which, as we know in this period of climate change, is probably inadequate. Just look what's happening in California as we speak. I mean, it's unheard of, the inundation of the Los Angeles area. And something like this could certainly happen in here. And if there was a development of this size, how many residents would be adversely infected affected, inconvenienced, and the developer himself would incur enormous expenses. And then what happens with the insurance after a flood of that magnitude occurs? Who's going to insure this project? So would the developer contribute to an appropriate sum to help remediate future costs of cleanup and reconstruction? Given all these negatives, I urge the commission to reject the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Robert Clark, 13 Firetown Road. I'm not going to repeat anything that's already been said. You guys and ladies have been through a lot with these hearings. I didn't see them all, but I saw enough to know that there's a million different pieces of information you have to process. And so I just would ask or hope, and I know you're not going to like to hear this, but you do not rush to close the public hearing. We're hearing revision after revision after revision at every meeting, even some tonight, and even some that's projected to be down the road. So I guess my only point is I just hope you guys let everybody speak, and enough time is given for that public speaking time. Thank you.
Good evening, Pat Weisberg, Lenora Drive, 3 Lenora Drive. You all had in your packet, I sent a letter, I sent spreadsheets of what the population increase and everything is going to be. So I certainly won't go through any of that. And in the letter, I said that in the January 17th meeting, the Silverman Group admitted their business plan was residential and rental. That's not what the form-based code says on page 1. And this project, with all due respect to the Silverman Group and all due respect to everyone that has been involved in this, is an incredible amount of time that has been spent on a project that should have been DOA, dead on arrival. There's so many questions that aren't answered if you're going to pursue this. But one thing I do want to say is that I grew up in West Hartford. I lived there for the first 25 years in my life. I loved West Hartford Center. I did not want to come to Simsbury. I wanted to live in West Hartford. We couldn't afford West Hartford. We moved to Simsbury. It will be 40 years, 2 months from now. You know what? I praise God every day for being here. Blueback Square is awful, in my opinion. If you wanted to live in New York City, that's fine. That's your opinion. That's where you want to be. But to put a Blueback Square and use that as a model to come to Simsbury, I don't think so. But one thing I do want to emphasize is that don't lose the 30,000 foot view of what's happening here. In your packet, I had included the article that was in the Hartford Courant on January 30th about build as much housing as possible and consulting with a state that has an illegal immigrant problem. And now they want to bring their solutions to Connecticut. I'm sorry, this is a different place. We do have zoning. And if you've ever been to the Southwest and seen zoning really not enforced or even exist, you'll know what a hodgepodge mishmash it is. Simsbury is a beautiful place. It always has been. And please, please, let's leave it beautiful to the next generation. I did include a proposal for if small housing on small lots doesn't work, which seemed to be denigrated by the Silverman Group, that maybe something a little bit more creative. Theme park, I never even thought of. Good going, John. But what I did say was some sort of a technology center. We do have a dearth of the trades. And that would be a wonderful use and could qualify with mixed use. But we have the ingenuity, we have the intelligence, we have the creativity. Let's not settle for what one resident once in one of these meetings called communist-style housing. So please, consider your decision very carefully. I would highly recommend that you reject this project. Thank you.
Good evening, Nick Wolf, 12 up the road. A couple things that I never heard here was on the fact with the commercial side of things. I think Simsbury does need some commercial side aspect and businesses. As a young family, I grew up in Simsbury actually, moved away, now I'm back here raising a family. Some things have gone on with Simsbury with changes that I haven't honestly been too fond of. And I think I speak for a lot of young families out here. No one wants this. And then on top of that, with the commercial side of things, are we talking, it's a 2-lane road down Route 10. We're talking 53-foot tractor trailers going down 90,000 pounds, you know, backing up to loading docks to offload things. I mean, the congestion on that would be, you know, horrific. What about the bridges? You know, we have the small little bridge. What's that rated for? There's no easy in, there's no easy out. Also, third point I've never heard was the sewage consumption. A 5% increase, how is our municipalities going to handle that? I think this is a very, like the last speaker spoke, a very sparse and not well-contrived plan, and I hope you guys deny it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Horan. I live at 16 Hampton Circle. I lived in Simsbury for 13 years now. We moved here when we were starting a family. Felt really welcomed by the community. I appreciate that. I think Simsbury has a lot to offer to families and people who are looking to move here. I used to work for the Hartford. I worked in that building for a little while. I miss the building and the pink marble, but alas, it's gone now. I support the proposal. I think it would be great to have some more housing for folks. I think a new restaurant would be cool. Some mixed commercial space, sure. And also, I've seen the group, it seems like they're willing to work with us and to accommodate some of the suggestions for changes. Going from 4 stories to 3, sounds good to me. It's a big change for them and a loss of capacity. But, you know, it's a change that I like and support. Some of the other things that they've done, you know, more duplexes, calling out the amount of affordable housing that's available, bumping up from 10 to 15%. I appreciate the flexibility. And I look forward to having, you know, more folks move to Simsbury and looking forward to welcoming them.
Good evening. My name is Fred Seidenberg. I've lived at 132 Old Canal Way for the last 22 years, and I have commuted on Hot Meadow all that time. And I haven't heard any discussion about traffic and the increasing traffic from the existing Talcott Ridge. Now you're going to have another project. We had a fight to keep the light in front of Old Canal Way, and Representative Hampton helped us out with that. And it's just more and more traffic. And as I go down Hot Meadow towards Avon, you have more and more parcels for sale and development. And at each end, you have 2 troublesome intersections, one at Route 44 and one at 185. Has any consideration been given by overdevelopment? How are you going to turn in and out of the feeder streets? Are you going to need a light at Latimer Lane? Getting in and out of Cumberland Farms or Dunkin' Donuts? It seems to be a tremendous increase in traffic. And the other concern I have is the impact on our fire and police departments, particularly fire departments. Are we going to need more apparatus? A lot more structures than we had 22 years ago, and we still have the same number of stations and vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Al Weisbrick, 3 Lenore Drive, West Simsbury. Again, I don't want to burden you guys with things you've heard again and again, but the thing that hasn't been mentioned tonight is that this size of influx on Simsbury's various facilities and various needs that need to be filled now, dealing with from the whole spectrum from school to social services, on and on and on. This is all going to burden the rest of the property owners in the town. So if there were a way that all that additional cost could be passed on to the developer right from the get-go, then that would change things a little bit. But nevertheless, what's happening here is all that money that's being made on these developments is going out of state. We're not getting anything from it. The notion of a little bit of taxing, yeah, well, the rest of the costs are all going to be spread across the rest of you and me. So keep that in mind as well. Thank you.
Diane Nash, 5 Marywood. I appreciate what Bruce said about our guests here. Part of the reason we sound rude, maybe, is we're frustrated. We're frustrated, not frankly by the Silverman Group, because they are doing exactly what I would hire them to do if I was having their development. I would start the process exactly when they did, when we were between town managers. The clock starts ticking. We were at the time of an election. Most of you are new on the committee. So we have new people on zoning. We have Christmas, our first public hearing. Second one, New Year's. The timing has been wonderful. Deliberate? Maybe. But now our commissioners are faced with TikTok. We can't extend the hearings because we're under the regulation of how long you can extend the hearing. So it has to close tonight, if I'm not mistaken. And the only way we can start over, the only way we can say, get the experts in. Our attorney here says, we didn't understand. This is something new and different. It's a complicated code. It's different. If ever there was a need for using the code that exists in Simsbury, to hire an expert at the developer's expense, you've got to reject this project because it doesn't meet the goal of what form-based code was supposed to be. So my recommendation, you don't extend and use your other 30 days, or now 30 days, or 2 weeks, or 66 days, whatever we have. You reject it, and you start over. You say, come in with this proposal, and let us take a fresh look and say, do we think a 3-story unit with 400 and whatever the latest number is what a mixed-use code looks like for Simsbury, and is it what we need? Hire the experts, get the real numbers, get the help you need to make the proper decision, and then most of us who are frustrated by saying, we elected you to do what's good for Simsbury and in the public's best interest. Some of your statements are still fresh on the internet. And I've read them just last night, and I thought, if they do what they said they were going to do, they will just say no. So thank you.
Hi, Becky Latimer, 5 Spruce Lane in Weetog. I totally agree that Silverman has an interest in making a profit, and our town has an interest in not going into debt. We have an interest in not passing on debt from one project and spreading it around the taxpayers. I don't know that we have seen very good economics or very good financials on this project. I don't know that there's any kind of agreement on how many students will come out of the North and the South Hartford projects, areas, and what the cost to the schools will be. And if I was away over holidays and I missed the meetings that were called over the holidays, but if it is somewhat accurate that the town with a $115 million budget spends about $4,500 on each resident, then if you bring in 1,200 new people from this project, that will cost about $5 million to the town. And I don't know that this project is generating $5 million. So I would agree with the previous speaker that we need time at least to look at the economics of it. And then we need time to figure out what the actual height of the roofs is. Is it 45? Is it 55? And I want to say that I think the Martin Luther King, and this is an aside, the Martin Luther King Memorial is in a beautiful location now. I think it's beautiful to look through it and see the cemetery, and many of the shapes echo each other and they're beautiful. But I know Mr. Donahue was extremely unhappy about the move there, and he wanted it to be at the Historical Society, and people felt it was less appropriate there and that it worked out well. It's beautiful where it is.
Thank you.
Hi, Susan Messino, 41 Madison Lane. I'm simply asking you to reject this project because we really need, well, for many reasons, and I'm going to keep this short. You know, I did already send in comments about the wild and scenic, federally designated wild and scenic river, the critical habitat. I just feel like we need independent experts to review this. We should have triggered that. I know someone else mentioned this. We should have triggered that right away for such a big project next to a wild and scenic river with all this critical habitat and such an important parcel on the town gateway. And unfortunately, we've run out the clock. I guess we don't have time to do that now. I also want to say that one of the best things about Simsbury is that people speak up for what they care about. That's the power of our town, not something to try and diminish. And so the things that people said they care about is we want workforce housing. We're interested in manufactured housing, both of which would be 100% affordable. I only told one other person to come here tonight, and I didn't tell anyone to take the survey, but many of you know I'm on open space, and again and again and again, open space and the nature in Simsbury is the highest value for what people want. And we absolutely, I mean, there is no sustainability without our ecology. So that's great if you want to talk to the Sustainability Committee, but no one's talking to the Open Space Committee, and when the public hearing closes, no new information can be added to the record. So I'm not sure what the point of those conversations will be at that time. So I just want to say, I mean, people have said a lot about what they want and what they don't want, and if you want to really be a benefit to the community, I would really encourage you to listen, and I would encourage the zoning commission to just vote no on this, and let's get reorganized a bit.
Hi, I'm Lori Boyko from 15 Oakhurst Road. And I want to start out by saying that people are saying people are frustrated. This is the nicest group of frustrated people I've ever heard in my life. I respect a property owner's right to use their property for uses within the zoning ordinances. But I'm a little more than a little frustrated that we're still discussing this with the developer, just now making any meaningful changes at all. I do appreciate Commissioner Beal encouraging the Zoning Commission to give some specific guidance to the developer by the Zoning Commission. But in all honesty, this feels super predatory on the Silverman's part. Rather than a developer coming into our town out of the gate seeking to create a collaborative development that both enhances the community and is profitable for them, creating a win-win scenario, their approach has been one attempting to pillage every ounce of gold their greedy private equity firm can extract from those of us who live here, raise our families here, and put down roots here. The community has spoken in droves about our concerns since December. We can't get 2 people to show up at a selectmen's meeting. So to get this many people in a room over and over and over shows that this community cares about this. They didn't need the zoning commission to summarize for the developer. That was just being nice. The developer simply needed to listen and respect what we had to say. In fact, we have an entire zoning code that lays out what is allowed and expected. We're only here because they don't want to follow it. They want exceptions. In fact, until around 10 years ago, give or take, Simsbury had no zoning provision that allowed for this type of high-density housing. That code was changed, from what I understand from my light reading of years of minutes, to allow for the apartments that went in behind millwrights. We have many residents in this town who have, over the years, requested such simple zoning variances as enlarging a front porch on their home a few feet over a setback line, or putting a garage addition on too close to a property line, and been denied. To approve a zoning application that has such a monumental impact on this town while denying much smaller exceptions by residents is not equal and defies logic. This project would grow our town population nearly as much as the population growth we've had over the last 10 years. 10 years. There are a number of specific items that continue to make this project one that should be denied. I'm not going to point them out one at a time, but I do want to point out that the new plan indicates, rather than properties not being visible from the road, they will be screened. We've had that promise before, notably by the storage facility on Hop Meadow that we can all still see. No, that's not part of the form-based code, but once a developer is looking for exceptions to the existing code, some concessions are a reasonable ask. Since the developer hasn't fulfilled obligations on other properties in town, I think we need to be very clear about any requirements and guardrails for accountability. Anything left flexible should be concrete and clear. I'm not clear if they are still proposing to cover more of the site than the 50% of the net usable area. But if that continues to be part of the proposal, this should be denied for that reason alone. A couple of other quick notes. Buckingham and Avon incorporated fields for use by town sports teams. That's a possibility here if we need a concession. I drove by the north property the other night, and the whole area was lit up like broad daylight. From Hot Meadow Street, that was fine, but if I had a house or condo anywhere in that vicinity, I would have a real issue with the flood of lighting, both from external sources and from all of the interior lights coming out of the big windows. I don't know if any of those are facing adjacent properties in this plan, but that's something to consider. I want to reiterate that the service commitment from Aquarian for a specific certain amount of water flow is only valid for 12 months. I'll leave you with a quote from Aquarian's commitment letter, keeping in mind the developer needs 4 years to complete this project. Quote, "If your proposed project is not ready for water service intended usage within 12 months of this letter, then Aquarian's ability to serve your project will have to be reevaluated." What does that do to other homeowners and their water supply in town if we put in all of these properties? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm John Schaefer, live at 16 Lost Brook Road in West Simsbury. Back when, I don't remember how many years ago it was, but when the town did the charrette to come up with the form-based code for this property, we spent a lot of time and energy. And the result of it, as was mentioned earlier, was the concept was to be a village-based concept, mixed use, meaning that within the same structures, there would be businesses, shops, restaurants, whatever, and people living, or the buildings would be right next to each other. They wouldn't just be with commercial stuff stuck off to the side of the project that might never get built. What has happened now, when we see these projects come through, is we just have a big block of apartment buildings. So we're just gonna end up with a lot of residential units, which means we're gonna have a lot of children. So one of the big issues in town has always been the property taxes. We don't need an economic study. There's already studies been done that show that the cost of educating a child in town works out, and I forget the exact numbers, but it's somewhere around 1.5 or 2 children per unit. It becomes more expensive for the town to have that living unit here than you get taxes from that unit. So it's just a consideration to have. We're going to be maybe having to do like we did with the schools now, of having to put on additions and renovations. It could happen in a few more years as soon as these get built and we have all those children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Sylvia Goldman, 17 Adams Road. I just want to say first thank you to everyone showing up today, because despite this side's comment that our opinion doesn't matter, because this was definitely stated, and only your opinion matters as the committee, you're representative of the town, of the residents of the town. And hopefully you share those opinions that were shared over and over, the majority of us. But of course, we are open to listen to everyone. And there are opinions to build more and to develop in one way or another. But I would say if we are developing the town, at this point, we developed a lot in the past years. It needs to happen from internal study from the town, saying this is what we actually need, and this is the part of town we need it. Not just because, yeah, we sold something. We sold a lot of properties apparently recently, and we built a lot of developments. And unfortunately, the developer we have here, it does not come with good data. It doesn't come with good surveys. As we're talking about the traffic. The traffic, I don't know when you did the study, probably it was during COVID when people are not on the roads, and it was summer, because traffic is awful, especially during peak hours. it's dangerous right now. Actually, there's more crashes happening on Half Meadow Road. I don't know if you've seen the recent reports, but that's true. I don't know if you're driving actually during peak hours. But that means that any decision you're making is going to burden the town. Somebody asked what was the school, what was the report for the schools. You mentioned in the first committee meeting that will be 96 students coming out of 580 apartments or units. What is that? This is like only 40 units will have kids? It just doesn't make sense. If you ask anybody, ask the people that are moving in out of town, and the number one reason is why you're moving here? For the schools. So it's impossible for 580 units to have 96 kids. Now probably will be 76 if you decrease 25%, which again is really, I cannot even say where these numbers can come. And the reality is, you mentioned that you work with the Board of Education. The chair of Board of Education and the ex-chair of Board of Education actually stood in front of you and they said that nobody from the Silver Group contacted them. Nobody worked with them. So these numbers are fictitious numbers, and it's just really unrealistic, either the traffic, neither the education. Think about 1,000 new cars coming on Hop Meadow. We're talking about one side wide road on each side. Sorry, I'm just, like you said, frustrated, and I really am, because you have to tell us what you need from us as residents to do or to say, because we are showing up, because that's what we think we need to do. But you need to tell us what we need to do to actually make this either change or be absolutely, declined. Because even 432 units, I'm sorry, but I cannot say thank you for changing it, because the initial plan was under 400 units. You upped it by 50% to right now decrease it by 25. So this is not something of a goodwill that you're doing for us. You're just going back to initial plan that you had, and it's even more units still than that. I think the initial sale was 50% commercial, 50% residential, right? I still don't see that. These units in the condensity is too much. The north side has 299, but also 120 units. So that's 420 units. You want to build another 430 units. That's 900 units in one location of the town. We don't have anything like that. You're hearing all of the stories for other towns that they destroy their towns by making these decisions. And we are right now discussing to make the same decision for our town. I just don't understand it. Like, how are we willing to even consider that? Of course, there are some solutions and some plans, and we need to listen, again, what the town needs, and you come up with a plan, when it will happen, build, if it's affordable, where it's going to build, and how many units we can sustain. We don't have the infrastructure to sustain that. Latimer Lane, specifically the ex-chair said, cannot have any more kids. For 100 new kids, that means you need to build a new elementary school. What's going to happen with the middle school? Even if it's 100, which is not going to happen. You need the new, then what's going to happen in the high school? You're talking about ripple effects, and when we're talking about expenses, yeah, the real estate taxes from rental are completely different from ownership. So we're not talking about that much money coming in, considering the expenses we're going to have. And now the expense is only for every year. If we have 1,000 more cars on the road, that means more appreciation on the road. That means you will have to be updating those roads, fixing them much more often. That means you're going to need more lights, you're going to need more police, you're going to need more fire workers, you're going to need maybe the ambulance and everything. The infrastructure is not there to sustain this. The burden on the community will be too much at that location after all the developments that have already happened and the changes that we've seen in the town. Like, if I ask either one of you, what is the main thing or the few good things you like in Simsbury? I can tell you that if you think about how this development will affect those things, it will be negatively. So I would just really encourage you and ask you to really reconsider this and think about the voices that you heard today in the past for the resident. You are here to better Simsbury, and I think you have a big responsibility. And it's very hard to see it that we're working with a developer that doesn't seem to respect what our desires and what our vision for the town is, because it can cost them something. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ellen Gilbert. I live at Talcott Acres, which is 126 Hot Meadows Street. Our condominium borders the property in question tonight. First of all, I want to say that Aquarian letter that's good for 1 year was dated November 16th, 2023. So that's how long that letter is good for. Commercial, I was actually leaning towards being agreeable with this project until I saw that commercial building. And I'll just say it again, the yellow building that is almost across the street at the Cumberland Farms has been empty for about 10 years. And it looks like a long commercial building, but it's seen by hundreds of people a day. It has a lot of exposure and it is not being rented. A building that is set back from Hot Meadows Street where you can't see it, I don't see how that is going to be more marketable. And the other thing is that for 3 years they've tried to rent that more complete building on the ridge at Talcott Mountain North, and they have not been able to rent that building. So I don't know how there is a plan to be able to get people, businesses to go back and be hidden in the back of that property. I agree totally with what was said about the burden on the town, about the taxes, the school system, the fire, the emergency, and like was requested last time, we do need an independent study of what an impact of a large residential property like this would have. And so, to be honest, I want you to say no. I want the developers to come back with a better plan. And in the meantime, we look at and have studies done on the town for how this can work in the future. Because it's not like we want it to stay an empty parking lot, but we want it to be something that is good for Simsbury. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening. Carol Africola from 10 North Drive in Simsbury. I apologize for not having been to a lot of these meetings, so I hope I won't be too redundant. But to begin with, I'm opposed to the application. I appreciate your holding all these meetings to hear the people's voices. We've elected you to look after the welfare and the interests of the citizens of Simsbury, and not just for the state, but for the out-of-state developers. These developers, like the Silverman Group, have a substantial money interest in Simsbury. They want to maximize the amount of units so they can put on this property. They do not have a care that this will impact our community and those around us. They will not, as in some states, help pay for additional schools in order to address the increased enrollment. Latimer Lane School, as you know, is undergoing a needed expansion and renovation to meet the overcrowded needs of the students at present. They have used up all their available land. They aren't going to be able to expand any further. So will we have to build another school? Will we have to redistrict, send kids to Tooten Hills or Central or Squadron in order to accommodate the increased number of students population? I don't believe that the Silverman Group care about the impact of the housing on our flora and fauna in the area, the Farmington River, the air quality, or even the historical character of Simsbury. The renditions always look beautiful when they put all the drawings out and so forth, but I live in the north end of town, and we had the renditions for the solar farm, which was supposed to shield it so we wouldn't see it. Well, the berms are very small, it's overgrown, it's, many of the trees are dying. We have a rather flimsy fence that is in front of the solar farm, and then we have the chain link behind it. So once a developer leaves, it may not be taken care of and look like it did in the pictures that they showed when they were asking for the application. I'm reminded of the old song, pave paradise to put up a parking lot. The construction and the runoff will undoubtedly affect the quality of the Farmington River. How much we can only guess. Even with assurances from developers, they will not be here with our annual flooding in the fall and in the spring. Air quality will also be affected with increased cars, trucks, construction vehicles, not to mention the traffic impact with people have already spoken about. And it's not just Hot Meadow Street, it'll be Route 44, it'll be Simsbury Road. We'll see more congestion at rush hour and beyond. And we are trying to strive for a cleaner environment. I'm not sure that that's going to happen with this type of large residential building. I think the other thing that we have to also look at is the impact on the police, fire, emergency, and public works department. We can't underestimate that. Will the developers help us to fund hiring new employees for these different departments? I think not. I think primary rebuttals have been that Simsbury will reap, tax revenue from this development, but at what cost? The sales pitch is usually stated when the Hartford moved to town. They said the same thing. We were going to get lots of revenue when the Hartford was here. Well, it's gone. It's in Bloomfield's Windsor line, and so they are getting the revenue. We are not. Affordable housing has always been used as either a carrot as well as a cudgel to local politicians and residents. In my opinion, Simsbury really does have more affordable housing than is stated. The only housing that is ever counted in the Connecticut stats are those units built after the legislation was passed in 1989. So older homes, senior housing, apartments built in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and we have those throughout the town, are not counted when this 8-30 Connecticut statute was enacted. I think this particular statute is being abused sometimes and used by developers to get a foothold into a myriad of communities around the state. If all else fails, I know developers, and this was true with Vessel, is when they wanted to build on Hot Meadow Street near Mitchell Auto Group, they decreased the number of units. They changed and so forth. And I think that was to placate the residents, that they were being more cooperative and so forth. They did not get their application through for a variety of reasons. A lot of it was flooding. It was the floodplain, and that is also adjacent to this area as well. And so lastly, I would say many Simsbury residents are not opposed to development as long as it's responsible, reasonable, and takes into account the character of the town and does not adversely affect the daily lives, our daily lives, the lives of our children and future generations, our environment, including the air quality, clean water, education, recreation, infrastructure, public and safety services, and opportunities afforded to the residents, young and old. What you decide in the future here will have far-reaching ramifications and can't be altered. And we urge you, or I urge you, to reject this application. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate your being here time after time and meeting after meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rochelle Obraigo. I live at 195 West Monroe Road. Our schools don't have room.
script here.
Hello, my name is Beth McNair, and I reside at 57 Simsbury Manor Drive in Weetock. I've been here in Simsbury since '96, so I guess I feel very similar to what everybody said here tonight. I won't repeat everything and duplicate, but I will say that Simsbury has changed, and we need to make decisions that we all feel comfortable with because there will be no turning back. And I heard some really great questions on this side, and I heard some really wishy-washy answers on the other side. So I'm kind of surprised that this is the last meeting, so I feel like I do have to speak because this is the first time I've come. So I apologize for that. I will say I have seen the traffic. I live off of Vladimir Lane, and that left onto Vladimir Lane, I literally pray and look in my rearview mirror hoping people aren't going to go 60 squeezing by, and they do. And if you have teenagers who are driving on that road, it is completely changed, and it is a dangerous area. I don't have all the answers on how the development will pan out in the end. I am very uncomfortable with what I heard today. I think there have been many, many changes to Simsbury, and I just hope we make the right decision, and I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
Anybody else would like to speak? Going once, going twice? Well, we're going to move on then. My thought in terms of next step is I want to offer the applicant an opportunity to add any comments that they'd like, and then we're going to move on to some commission discussion. So, TJ, I don't know if you have something more for us.
Mr. Silverman would like to say a word, and I'd like to finish.
Well, listen, I'd like to say thank you for everybody's time. Obviously, it's not always great to hear, issues from the public. It's kind of unfortunate that the public opinion is so bad towards us, considering we built, I think, a good community. I think people enjoy being there. We have a 100% leased community, and it's been a success, I think, for the town. Everybody remembers the Hartford when they left. I think it was my first time at one of these meetings when I said we were going to deliver a promise to replace the tax revenue and build a community that was going to be a success. And I think we did exactly that. And I always say to George, and he hates me saying it, is that we built exactly what we said and provided the tax revenue back from when the Hartford left. And again, it's unfortunate the community doesn't appreciate that, but at the end of the day, we want to build something else that's first in class, that's going to provide a good benefit for the community. And people like living there. I wish I could have got more residents holding from the community because I know they like being there. You walk around there, they like it, they love Simsbury. I want you to know something, this is a great town, that's why we came here. I may be from New Jersey, that's why I speak so fast. But the fact of the matter is why we invested so much in Simsbury is because how much we appreciate the town and what it has to offer. And again, we want to know that we're committed here, we're long-term holders. We own that community, 300 units, 299 units, right? That's us, that's my family, right? It's not a private equity shop. We don't farm it out. We don't have other investors. That is our community. That's how much we care about the town of Simsbury. And I want everybody to understand that, even though I think the public may not, right? But at the end of the day, right, we want to do right by the town because we're going to own it forever. I want to use the right materials. I want to use the right commercial space. I want it to be a success, right? And I appreciate the fact that others have a different opinion on what commercial is or what it should look like. I'm only trying to build something that's going to be a success. Because the worst thing I hate looking at is that building that's still not leased. 3,000 feet that I can't lease, right? And everybody can comment on the fact that maybe we haven't done it right, or we haven't done the perfect job. Listen, you're probably right? We're developers, right? And what we do is we try to do the right thing, but occasionally we don't do the best thing. So at the end of the day, we want to do right, we want to do the right thing, and I think we're going to build a great community here. I appreciate everybody listening. I appreciate all the experts, and I do appreciate the public. I mean, everybody has an opinion, and I got thick skin, so it's it's the way it is. So again, thanks for everybody's time. I'll leave it to TJ.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, thank you very much. It's been a process. It's been a difficult process, but it's been a positive process. We appreciate the community questions. We appreciate the community input. We appreciate your questions, your input. And as you deliberate on this important matter for the town, if this is the closing and we're done with the process, I hope that you'll concentrate on what the specific question is before you and what the specific action you have to take now, with a full understanding that if we get through this modest, minimal change in the master construction site plan, that we'll be back with a full site plan for your approval at that time. But we appreciate everything you do. You're all volunteers. We raised a passionate issue. There were a lot of passionate speakers, and it's not easy for you to be away from your families and not listening to it. I don't think you enjoyed it much more than I did. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Now, did any of the commissioners have further questions for the applicant?
So I'd like to say, I think we have a list of 10 specific things here that they are requesting to be changed. Some of the things here I don't think have been talked on by anyone at any point. So I think we should go through these 10 things bullet by bullet and make sure we get some response, some feedback on each one of these.
Josh, do you want to just go down the list and one at a time?
Yeah, George, I don't know if you want to pull up the. I have a list. Yeah. I got it in front of me.
The original list. Now, there's been one or two modifications, but hang on. I had a presentation on it, but I don't know that I saved it. I know it's in the staff report. Yeah, so I can do that.
It's in the folder that says for this meeting, not the big folder, but in the subfolder.
Yeah, dated January 29th.
Yep, I got it. Yeah, so let's go through them. So the first is really a substituted one from the original. So if you think about the applicant added the neighborhood commercial, so that no longer required a modification of that requirement. But the applicant is requesting essentially a substitute that says the neighborhood commercial zone, in addition to the permitted uses noted in Table 6.1, shall also permit the following on the ground floor and upper floor uses: light industry and assembly, cottage industry, light manufacturing, research and development, warehouse and distribution. So today, in the use list, those essentially flex and light industrial uses are not permitted in the neighborhood commercial zone. So the applicant is asking to those select uses to be allowed in the NC zone, in that flex building. The second request is related to the required area of windows and doors on each street. And this is actually not even a modification. The zone requests the applicant to establish at the time of the master site development plan specifics, especially spacing specifics on architecture. And so that's what they're establishing, which I think is similar to what was done on the north side. So the third item is related to the ground floor elevation. So the current requirement in the code says the ground floor elevation of all residential buildings located less than 10 feet from the property line shall be raised a minimum of 18 inches above finished floor. The applicant is asking to modify that to allow the finished floor to be even or not raised, so when it's within 10 feet of the property line. Essentially, that's a challenge the applicant would describe related to providing access, essentially step access into the units.
Yeah, so that's a question I'd have for an applicant on that one. Is I understand you think the 18-inch minimum provides an ADA hurdle there, but is there like something beyond just saying, hey, no limit? Like, would 9 inches be considered reasonable in your mind? Like, where would be reasonable in there?
Yeah, unfortunately not. We that was the challenge we had in the north. So basically, the intent of that section of the code is to create like a stoop, right, to have a sitting area. So if you look at what we did in the north, we did do that, and we still intend to do that. But on the ADA units, you can't have that. So just having that written as a flat, you must have that, makes your ADA units non-compliant. So it's not that we don't. You would, by just nature of building the units themselves, have the step ups in the foundation anyway. But for flexibility on the ADA units, we wouldn't want that. And we're always a little beyond 10 feet, but we just wanted to make it flexible so that if we ever were that close, we wouldn't have to come back and say, oh geez, we just backed ourselves in a corner. But the intent is to follow that as much as possible, but the ADA units cannot.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So the ADA saying basically it has to be flat. It can't be like 3 inches with a ramp.
The ADA
even?
unit must be flat at that point, because if you have a ramp, it complicates it, and then it still doesn't meet the intention of that code.
Okay.
How do you do like a mixture of ADA units and regular units where some have a stoop and some are flat? Like, isn't it all
They're
now
different
at a
access
certain
points, so that was a very, very big challenge on the north side, which is not the type of product we're doing here on the townhouses. So I won't bore everybody with the details, but each entry door, if you look at some of them have steps and some are flat, but those finished floors actually vary on the townhouses, so it's a very intricate design.
Because it's not one. It's not. It's essentially like connected buildings. It's not one floor with a hallway.
You got
So
it.
it's
Yep.
okay. Got it. Thanks.
Right, so the fourth modification deals with, again, section 5, which is the standards table. And in this case, the standard is that for buildings along type A street frontages, or the type A street frontages should have at least 65% of the lot frontage as building. And in this case, the applicant is asking to amend that to have buildings fronting along at least 65% of the block's frontage unless constricted by environmental or natural features. So I think the best way to explain that is probably to bring up just the color. In this case, you've got kind of some large stretches of environmental. You've got wetland. You're going to have a wetland stretch here, so it's hard to accomplish 65. And then, of course, on this opposite side of the street where you've got the adjacency to the floodplain and the wetland area, there aren't any buildings. So, for those reasons, they're asking to allow that condition be exempted for areas where there's natural area.
So what would that look like?
Well,
What would that look like, the change?
Well, the change is required in order for them to do this particular development. So it would change. It would be a significant change to the street layout.
So
my read is that it's required in order to do almost anything on this site.
Sorry, would you like me to elaborate?
Sure.
So I think I mentioned it last time. The form-based code is actually written. People aren't going to like hearing this. To actually be denser than what we're showing. The form-based code is written in a way that when you're walking on the sidewalk, you should always have a building on your left or your right. Always. There's even where on the north where we have gaps. Or even when you have a small gap, I probably can't find it at this scale, but like even like here or here, the small gap, you're supposed to put a garage or a pergola or a structure. The code wants to have nothing but structure on your left and your right everywhere you go. We're asking to reduce that. I can't point out the exact situation, but like for example, when you get to here, when you're walking across this way, when you only have the short ends of the building coming across, the code wants there to be a structure here and a structure here. It wants it always kind of be backed up. So we're asking for some relief there so we don't have to make this denser. like, for example, when you look at the north here, on this side, we have a gap between the two buildings here, but our 65% is made up because we have 100% on the side of the assisted living building. It was a very particular aspect of the code that we actually had to calculate as we went around the site to make sure that we met that. And we're just asking for, when we come across a wetland feature, we don't have to abide by that, because obviously then it would impact the wetland or some other constraint.
This site is basically surrounded by wetlands.
It's really about the internals. It's about, I'd have to look at it at a smaller scale to highlight exactly where it is. It's really like about these gaps in here. Like I said, when you're coming across this way, because of the way the buildings are oriented, like this one, for example, not having a building across from it reduces that 65%. Same on this side.
But those changes that you're pointing with the highlighter, this says that the frontage would be changed because of environmental natural features, but that's not what you're pointing to.
Jackie, I'll have to go back and take a closer look at it.
Okay. No, I'm just trying to
I
be
don't remember
clear.
exactly where the spots were. I'll have to highlight and see where that was.
Okay.
I mean, we could pull out the type, the type A frontage streets and do that.
That's true. There is a graphic within the full MSDP that shows where the type A and D streets are, or B streets are, and you can.
All right, let's keep moving, just so we can go through everything. 5 is a change to the requirement that surface parking lots may not be adjacent to a street intersection, square, or occupy a lot that terminate a street vista. In this case, the applicant is asking to allow parking lots adjacent to intersections, or for them to terminate in a vista, as long as they landscape as part of the design solution. Yeah, and that's why the applicant included that landscaping area as part of that revision.
Because once again, the code doesn't even want you to look down a street and not see a building at the end of it.
Yep. It doesn't. 6 is the residential requirement that a garage, that the garage shall be set back at least 3 feet from the front facade. The applicant is asking that the garages that do not have to be set back from the front facade of the single-family homes. I think the applicant's architectural elevations essentially show them even.
I think they're actually, I'll let Laura speak to this too. There might be, I think there's several building types, and one of them might be set back a little bit, but Laura could explain that.
There's one building type that has a 2-car garage, and it's designed specifically based on its location in the site. It addresses a corner lot. So it actually has if you're looking at the front facade of the building, or the single family, the garage doors are on the side. So that front facade still appears like a front facade because the garage portion has a window and a gable. It's not with garage doors. So that's the one instance where it's about 2 feet projected from that front facade based on the rest of the layout of the single family. There is one other single family type that has a 1-car garage that is in balance with the front facade, and it's more a game of symmetry and balance and the reason why that occurs. But the rest of them are set back.
Item 7 is essentially a component requirement that requires that the neighborhood, that the neighborhood component zone, in this case, on this graphic, would be the area in blue, so where the single families are. The code requires that component zone can be no more than 50% of the Hartford South site. The applicant is asking for a modification that would say that neighborhood can be no more than 50% of the net acreage of the Hartford South site. Of course, the net acreage excludes jurisdictional wetlands, floodplain, those kinds of things. Really, the area you see in blue here, the undevelopable area of the site. The 8th item it relates to the multi-use trail. So there is a multi-use trail requirement, a width requirement in the code. It says 12 feet. When it's along a Highway 10 frontage, the applicant is asking to narrow to 8 feet, particularly in the area as it crosses the wetland area, and those are for environmental reasons.
So, sorry, George, so the only caveat I want to make to that, which I didn't write in there, and I mentioned it earlier, is we would like it, we're gonna take that approach, but we'd like it where if the Wetland Commission disagreed, that we wouldn't have to come back here. So we would ask that maybe that gets caveated, unless, I don't want to write the language, but like unless denied by the Wetland Commission, something like that.
Quick question, because I know we have, the recommendation is a minimum of 10. If we required, say, you to post signage saying that the path gets narrow for anything less than 10, would you have any objections to that?
No, of course not.
Item 9 is a requirement, a minimum setback requirement in the code that requires a minimum setback of 100 feet from all designated wetlands. In this case, the applicant is asking in certain areas to go within that 100-foot area. So you can kind of see they show the wetland boundary here, and you can see that there is some development. The applicant's point, I'll let it. You make your point.
Sure, thank you.
I'll make it for you.
Sure, no, thank you. And I guess our point is that all of those areas are within current disturbed areas, so they're within parking lots for the most part. So we're actually saying that, the code is very detailed, it's very good, but obviously some things were missed. If you read the code by the letter of law, you can't even go and rip out the parking lot, right? Because you can't go within the 100 feet of the wetlands. So we're asking to be allowed to rip out that parking lot and have it be lawn. And in a couple cases, yes, the house would be in that location, like specifically like here. But all these instances are in an area that is currently parking lot. So we're not asking to go any closer to the wetland or undisturbed area. It's all within paved areas or areas that are already disturbed.
And and just as a note, I mean, again, if the application progresses to the site plan process, this application would go to the Inland Wetlands Commission prior to coming back to the Zoning Commission, and so the Zoning Commission would be reviewing those the entire development as part of that wetland permitting process. Item number 10 is a series of requested modifications to the development standards table. The first relates to the maximum block perimeter, and Paul's probably gonna want to walk us through that as opposed to me. The second is allowing two-lane undivided and divided, where the code just asks for residential streets to be undivided. Parking along the type A and B streets, the code says head-in perpendicular on-street parking is not permitted, and the applicant is asking for head-in perpendicular parking in some of those locations. Then the final modification, the code requires tree wells or planters, and the applicant is asking to provide either planters or trees without, I guess, tree wells or planters, just kind of standalone planted trees. You want to talk about the block, the 2,000, because that's a little bit complicated.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. I think that, and George, I don't remember if some of those were some of those variations, or were they just, the code does ask us to establish certain requirements. So some things are established versus modifications.
Yeah, so
I don't recall if that was a modification.
So I think the more confusing one is the maximum block perimeter,
Yeah,
which
so-
the code says 2,000 square foot or 2,000 linear foot block perimeter.
Yep.
Think about block perimeter.
So the block perimeters are basically saying that when you take these quads like this block can't be more than 2,000 square feet, right? And I believe the area that we deviated from that's slightly more than 2,000 is actually the loop of the single-family homes. So I think, please don't quote me on this, but I believe that was slightly over 2,000 feet, and that's where we divided it with this walkway. We felt that would be a divide, and really it wasn't intended for the single-family type area, but we want to meet the intent as best as possible, and that was one area that exceeded 2,000 feet.
For the head-in parking, I know you said you reduced the number of parking spaces with the reduction in number of units. Is that something you still need even with the reduction in parking spaces?
That's a good question, actually. I think if anything, it's more, I'd have to read it a little closer. Obviously, we know we have to fine tune more than just that list. The head-in parking that we had before was actually here across the front, which we took out. And we went to parallel, which is consistent with what's on the other side of the street, and the same here in the green. So really, the head-in parkings that we have are actually off the road, so it is possible that no longer applies. I'll have to look at that again.
I'm not sure it does, because it's about perpendicular parking. Kind of angled spaces. Probably don't.
Thank you.
George, you need your motion to extend beyond 10 o'clock.
If you're going to go beyond 10 o'clock, you would need a motion, yes, sir.
55 now.
I set an alarm. I set an alarm for 9:55. It hasn't come up yet.
It's 9, I got 9:30 here. Somebody's watches.
No, this says 9:55.
But since you've kind of done it, you may as well just make a motion now. And if we go past 9:50, not 10 o'clock, we go past.
Make a motion to extend the meeting beyond 10 o'clock.
Yes, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Motion is approved. We're going to be here till whenever. Josh, did you get to the points Josh, did you get to the questions that you had in mind?
I believe I've gotten all the points I wanted to make.
I want to follow up, Mr. Silverman, on the ownership question, Mr. Silverman.
Yes.
The planning, when your group went before the Planning Commission a few weeks back, one of the recommendations from the Planning Commission was ownership, having an ownership component in this project. And I think most commissioners voiced support for that. I know you said that it wouldn't work with the single-family homes. Did you consider it with the apartments, perhaps converting some of them to condos, or with the duplexes?
So, yeah, we looked at it from a housing standpoint for sales for a single family, as I expressed. We never looked at it from a condo standpoint. We're just not condo developers, and it's hard to find a condo developer that builds 3-story in these sort of suburban markets. So I would say that's just not something we do, and not something we've ever looked into, given sort of, it's not customary, quite honestly. It's probably we've seen in towns. More dense towns, it is fairly customary, but not in suburban towns. I wouldn't even know who to call.
Okay, so I just want to be sure that your final answer then on ownership is no. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, and as I said, the single-family route is the right way, and we just couldn't find sort of the correct buyer who made sense of the numbers.
Okay, and I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it might be helpful if, and I guess it depends on where we go with this tonight, but if there was going to be further discussion beyond, to actually see these exceptions and like where they are, because, you're like, oh, it's just one here and it's one there, but I would really like to see like, where are they? Where are the ones? Because you obviously have planned that out. And I think that it would help us understand better as a commission what the exceptions are, because maybe it's not a big deal, but it's really hard for us to see looking at this, and maybe it's here, maybe it's over here, and we don't really know. So that's just a note. And then I just had a question about, I was like looking at this plan further, and I just, so are these apartment buildings, are there like is it like a double loaded corridor in there? So there's apartments on both sides? Okay. So it's just like these two on the end here kind of face that commercial building, and they're a little bit less like facing into the community. But the other people are like engaged across the parking lot essentially. Is that true? Like in terms of, are there apartments on both sides? Because otherwise it seems like these 4 on the quad, it's like, yay, I live on this cool quad thing, and then the other two are like looking out into no man's land, like they're not in the community.
Yes, so to answer your first question, yes, it's a double-loaded corridor, so there's apartments on both sides.
Okay.
Some of these also have balconies, so they have a little bit of outdoor space as well. And yes, there's obviously the ones facing the green would overlook the green. Others are looking back more into that parking lot or across at each other. The others, I would say, hopefully aren't looking into no man's land, but looking out to a larger view. So luckily, this is a nicely wooded site around, so they will have some, greenery to be looking at as well.
All right.
Other comments or questions from the commission? I guess my inclination when we started this meeting was sort of a hope that we would get to a point where we could close the public hearing. At some time, you look at these drawings in this plan and, there's a lot of uncertainty here. And we can sit here for a long time trying to extract the little details of, so, and then there's the larger question out there. Are there 4 people on this commission who will vote for this? A yes. Knowing what we know now, no more, no less. What we know now is it. I'm not sure there's 4 people on this commission who are going to vote for that. And consequently, I was thinking, close the public hearing, and we would instruct staff to bring to the next meeting, the 21st, a denial draft motion and we take 2 more weeks to think about what we know. We talk about it again on the 21st, decide what we want to do. Just because we have a draft denial doesn't mean we need to deny, but we'd be ready to go. And if we find that there are, there's enough positive sentiment, we can have an approval motion too. But, at this point, I don't know. If there's no objection, I'm ready to do that. Now, if somebody wants to object, we could always have staff do 2 motions for the next meeting, an approval and a denial. But I think, well, well,
So just the only thing I would take as staff privilege on this would just be to remind the commission that once you close the public hearing, you cannot receive any additional information from staff, from the public, letters. You cannot receive any rebuttal from the applicant, and any unseated alternates cannot participate in the discussion on the motion or deliberation. So just remember, you can ask staff and council clarifications on items in the record, but you cannot receive new testimony. Staff cannot provide new testimony or new information. You cannot receive it from the public or the applicant. The record is the record. Do
we have any leeway extending the public hearing? I'm still not clear on that.
Yeah, you do. You have not run out of time. No, you have up to 65 days of total extensions throughout the process. The several pieces of the process, and you've really only used about 14 days of those extensions to this point. I think the applicant gave an extension to this date, and I think that's about. That was about 14 days, give or take. So yes, you have time within the timeline.
Would Would we need another approval from the applicant, or does the first approval?
So
count?
if you intend to extend the public hearing, that would be continuing, so you would need the extension in order to extend the public hearing. You do not need an extension to close the public hearing. Once you close the public hearing, you have 65 days plus whatever additional extensions to make a decision. Okay? And if you want to extend the public hearing, yes, you will need an extension from the applicant to do so.
One thing I was thinking we might be able to do, I know this was a little frustrating for people last time, but if we extend the public hearing and then close it for the next meeting, it allows us to get more information between the hearings. Now, that runs the risk of people not understanding that and getting very upset when we close the public hearing at the beginning of the meeting, but that does maximize our time without doing another round of in-person public hearings, which I don't think is probably necessary at this point. Does anyone see that?
Why?
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, I totally hear what you're saying, but I can't see how that's not gonna cause confusion and anger, just because
So I
someone's not going to
would not
understand that.
recommend, we would not recommend extending the public hearing and then not allowing the public to speak at the extended public hearing. I would not recommend that, no.
Okay.
I mean, if you extend the public hearing to Feb 21, which is your next regular meeting, you would do the same thing you would do tonight, and you would hear from the public.
What would be the
That would be our
goal
recommendation.
of extending the public hearing?
Well, it maximizes time, like, people can still send in letters, people can do all that kind of stuff.
We could get additional
We
information.
get additional information, and then theoretically, it's the best of both worlds, right? Because I don't think we're planning on doing another one of like these kinds of nights, but it would mean you'd have additional time to send in letters and stuff. But it probably is not worth the confusion now that I'm thinking about it a little more, so. Theoretically, it's more public input, but.
But we had personal, direct, face-to-face input from the people who were here tonight, which was a pretty good room full.
Yeah, I mean, we've received. a ton
I
of
suspect there are people at home who watch television and have some things to add, but, you know, we just can't keep going on and on and on with public hearings. I mean,
I think what we've heard from the public has been pretty clear. So I mean, I have a little tally here in my notebook of for and against, and I know that's not the benchmark that we go with, but I mean, I think it's been pretty clear.
Well,
and
that while that's true, in terms of the numbers, I don't know that that's a consideration we're really
no,
meant
which
to
is
be making.
what I just
Right,
said that.
okay, yeah, so we're not.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Dave, you look like you have something to say over there.
There we go. The only concern that I have at this point is we've had changes with the application. And we do not have information from various town agencies, et cetera, as to what impact those changes would have as to their recommendations, either for, against, or neutral. And if we close the public hearing, we will not be able to utilize that. That would be the only reason why I would think of going forward with an extension. We've had lots of hearings. We've heard from the public to a very large extent. But with these changes, we will be kind of shooting blind. And I'm not sure that that's the best thing for us to be doing.
So I would just add, as staff, so the application, when it was resubmitted on the 29th, was sent to all of your regular referral agents. I received one comment back from the police department who had no additional comments. The town engineering department had no additional comments. Have not heard anything else from any of the additional referral agents, but I mean, to be honest, I don't know that I would anticipate all that, all that much. I mean,
It's fewer people than the last time they looked at it. So theoretically, any yeah, it wouldn't make any of their jobs more difficult from the last time that they sent it in, so it makes sense.
So I think the question that remains before us is there, does time do anything to change anybody's minds here of this commission on, does more information, is there information, what would that information be if there was any, that would make any difference to what's gonna happen? Because if there's nothing and we feel like we have all the information that we need, then there's no point in continuing on longer, right?
The only thing I would say there is that after our last hearing, the developer came back with a revised proposal. I don't know, it's entirely possible that if we extend the hearing, they'll come back with a further revision.
And then the question would be, what is that we would be looking for if we were? Like, so
Right.
the question is, are we opening that can of worms, or are we saying there's been enough time?
Okay, so, I hear both of those. I agree with what you're saying, Kate. I think we do need to make that decision now. I think we've been back and forth on this so many times, and it's just, I believe I made this comment at the last meeting. Why were these small changes made last week? Why were these accommodations made just now? We've been talking about this ad nauseum for months. So, the end.
But
For me.
for me, I mean, we only gave them our recommendation, like our recommendations last month. I mean, they're not going to be able to pull recommendations off of most, like, public comment, because they don't know if we agree with that comment, right? We're the one who has to give them the recommendation if they think it's going to be actionable.
I'll just add to that I believe this group came to us, I think it was last summer, just as kind of like a heads up. This is what we're going to be bringing to you. And at that time, I do recall us saying, we don't want the tall buildings in the front. We don't want, such dense development. We gave some fairly clear opinions about what we wanted based on what we had seen in the previous development and all the feedback we had gotten from the town. And I don't really think that we got a lot of changes based on what we said last summer. So, I'm just saying, this hasn't really changed dramatically from what was shown to us last summer. I mean, have been improvements, no, but the overall effect hasn't changed.
I don't know, I'm saying it, but.
I hear you.
So what's the sort of, the consensus is to go now and close the public hearing? Okay.
And we don't have to, I don't think that we have to vote on it tonight, but I think we can close it.
Oh, correct. We don't have to make a decision
Yeah.
tonight other than to close the public
Yeah,
hearing.
we're going to want to
Or
have a
not
discussion.
close the public hearing. And if we don't close the public hearing, we have to plead with the applicant for more time.
Okay, it's like TJ has something to say.
Do we want to, do we grant, like, does he speak to us based on this discussion? Do we allow that? Is that allowed?
I don't see why not.
I mean, the public hearing is still open, so you can recognize anyone. The public hearing is still open.
Mr. Chairman, we'd like to know if we have a conforming application before you.
Okay, if we want a decision.
Tonight? Okay. So is that a discussion from us then?
When
Well-
I look
I
at
think-
the intent on the first page of this code, I don't see.
So I don't want to get sideways with the applicant on this, and nor is it my job to testify, but that is not a question you have to answer.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Your consideration now is whether you want to close the public hearing or not. If you don't want to close the public hearing tonight, I would recommend you forward it to your February 21st meeting with the applicant allowing for an extension. If you want to close the public hearing tonight, I would recommend a motion to close the public hearing.
Well,
I'm in
what's your
favor.
pleasure here? I mean,
I
I'm
would
in
make
favor
the
of
motion
closing
to close the public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
We'll
do I need to
second.
read something?
So we have a motion by Shannon and a second by Tony to close the public hearing tonight. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Then we'll vote on it. Those opposed, or those in favor of the motion to close the public hearing tonight, say yea. Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
And those opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion is approved and the public hearing is closed tonight as of 9:49 PM. So then we move on to, well, what's next? Our next meeting is on the 21st. And so we need to do something on the 21st about the outstanding application and go back to my earlier comment that while I believe, I really sense that there aren't going to be 4 votes in favor of this proposal. I think on that basis, we could just get a draft denial motion from staff. Alternatively, we could get an approval motion as well as a denial, and then we're ready to.
So-
If our discussion and our thoughts are clear on the 21st, we can make a decision on this.
Okay,
And we'll have the 2 draft motions.
I am prepared, or I can move that the zoning commission forwards ZCT 23-38 200 Hot Meadow Street to the February 21st, 2024 meeting and directs the town planning director in conjunction with the acting town attorney. To prepare a motion for denial of ZC 23-38 for consideration and action.
Is there a second for that motion?
Did you say the 20th or the 21st?
It's the 21st, it's a Wednesday.
Okay, just making sure.
Second.
So this is for the denial motion. We have a motion and we have a second.
There's
To move the
discussion.
event,
There's discussion.
Is there,
move the hearing to the 21st.
isn't there a discussion part of that?
I'm coming to.
Oh,
it.
sorry.
Hold on down there. And so, we have a motion and a second to move discussion, this application forward to the 21st and resume discussion of the commission. And also to request tonight that staff have prepared for that meeting a draft denial motion for our consideration. Recognizing that we're free to have discussion and we will hopefully come to a conclusion that night. If it's a denial, we're all set, there'll be a motion. In the end. So, all in favor? Say
No,
aye.
there's discussion.
Oh, excuse me.
Sorry. So yeah, I have a discussion point. I think we should have a motion for denial and approval ready to go for next time.
What was that again? I didn't hear you.
I would ask that, I don't know if it's like a friendly amendment or I have to
It's
study
right
my
here, it's
Robert's
right
rules,
here.
but yeah, I'd like there also to be a motion, approval motion prepared as well.
Well,
Just for clarification, what is the purpose of having an approval?
So we would
Motion
have
prepared.
we'd have 2 draft motions in front of us and we could pick one. That would be the approval, or that would be the purpose.
Because there could be discussion that would, like, we're gonna discuss as a board all the information available to us. We're gonna look at it in comparison to, we're going to verify its conformity or non-conformity. We're
Okay.
gonna talk about all the things,
All
right?
Yep, all right, that's clarifying.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I
Seems
support.
fair.
Yep. So,
so,
So I would ask the motion maker if that friendly amendment is okay.
I was just gonna do that. Thank you. You don't have to, we can have
You don't have
a
to,
separate
yeah.
motion on it. Just vote yours and see if there's another motion and a second.
So I would say no,
Okay.
You got a motion?
We have a motion and a second, and we've had discussion. Is there more discussion on this? It's still a motion for a denial draft motion for discussion among ourselves on the 21st. All in favor, say aye.
hold on a second, I'm not sure what we're voting on. So Shannon made a motion that staff prepare a denial for next meeting. Tucker asked for an amendment that would be both a denial and a separate approval. Shannon didn't agree to Tucker's proposed.
Right.
So her motion stands currently,
motion
unless what we're
stands.
voting on,
Okay.
you can vote
Thank you.
for or against the
Okay, thank you.
denial only.
Okay, are we clear?
Hang on one second. We don't want to get too deep into Robert's rules here, we gotta do it right. I think he's got a standing motion to amend, which I think you have to vote on his motion first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
But she didn't
His
accept
motion
it.
to amend.
but he could still
She
amend the
didn't
motion.
accept
It was a friendly.
Did
Was
he
it-
get a second for his motion?
No.
No.
Okay. All right, well, there you go.
It was just
Okay.
discussion.
Yeah.
Are you making a motion? Tucker?
I'm not making a motion right now.
Okay, so the only motion on the table
Yeah.
is Shannon's motion.
Right.
Thank you, Dave.
It's in favor of a draft denial motion for consideration on the 21st. Again, I'm just repeating something, so that's the essence of the motion. And we had obviously a motion and a second, so we're ready for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed, nay.
Nay.
No.
So it's 4-2. And the motion is approved. So voting against was Tony and Tucker.
So could Tucker now make a second motion?
Yeah,
No,
but-
They, well, I
We've
don't think so.
agreed on the motion, so that's
Okay.
it.
Okay, so move to adjourn.
I think we're ready for.
Just real quick, did we need to approve the minutes? Do you want to do that real quick before we go? Sorry, I know I'm like that person.
We'll just have to do it next
I
time.
know exactly.
We'll just move it. There were three minutes for consideration.
Yeah.
One was the meeting, our meeting on the 17th, and the other two were special meetings. There's really pretty thin
So those
content.
minutes have been properly posted within the time limit prescribed under the statute. So they are out, you know, we met those timelines, so you can delay again if you need.
Okay.
I think we should go ahead and approve them. I
Yeah.
mean, it's,
I didn't find it.
let's just get it done. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the,
17th, the 11th, and the 24th.
okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from the January 11, 2024 special meeting, January 17, 2024 meeting, and the January 24, 2024 special meeting.
Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Any discussion?
I think I have to abstain because I didn't go to the 17th meeting, but other than that, no.
Quick note, just, my last name was misspelled on the special meetings, but it was correct on the regular meeting. So,
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Michelson, I have already made those corrections.
you have, okay.
All right, and then we can call the vote.
Any other comments, questions? So we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the January 11th, January 17th, and January 24th meetings with the corrections that were offered. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay.
Sorry, abstain. As I'm abstaining, it's late, I'm sorry.
You're only abstaining from one, right?
Whatever.
It's a single vote. Okay.
Well, but
Yes,
she could.
I'm just abstaining.
And so for the record over there, George, Diane's abstained from the vote. It's one vote, all three except Diane's abstained. Okay.
I understand.
Got it. Okay, so there were 5 in favor and 1 abstention.
That's it, the
Okay.
meeting's over, so.
I think we're done for
Look at it,
tonight.
10 o'clock.
We
We didn't need to vote.
Wait, we didn't motion to adjourn.
Isn't that what we were doing?
Could we have a motion to adjourn?
I move that
Motion
we
to
adjourn.
I second that.
Okay.
Can we have a vote then?
We're going to have a vote in a moment. And so, as to adjournment, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion to adjourn is approved.
10:01.
No,
We
no.
need it.